Call. Richard Birch.
Present.
Todd Dwyer, I am here. Bob Pease is absent. Katie Childs.
Present.
Carl Luck.
Here.
Jack Rabbit.
Here.
Ken Jones.
Here.
Do we have any announcements from the commission?
I have a quick one. Just let everybody know, keep everybody up to date on the Eagle Scout project on Hollis Road. I'm meeting with the Eagle Scout tomorrow to go over some of the trail stuff that he's going to do, trail maintenance and marking on the Hollis Road property. So he's got all of his approvals he needs, and we'll be meeting with him tomorrow to look at the trails. So that one's moving forward.
Great. Jack.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, my wife Jane and I had a chance to take a lovely walk in the woods on Saturday. Beautiful day, and we decided to go up and visit the small town forest to see what kind of progress they made. It was amazing. First of all, they've put 2 parking lots in. The lower one, beautifully done. Upper one, the handicap lot, perfect. They have the uprights for the gate, about ready to go. Big log across the front of it. They did a really nice job on the culvert right at the flat piece. Riprap, beautifully done. The stream is meandering a little bit more towards the main trail, but I suspect we'll be able to take, that'll be able to be taken care of. But the thing I was most struck with was that, there is a significant change no matter what. And I was shocked. And I think when we went, we all were a little bit shocked and went back. But the irrepressible force of Mother Nature is just amazing. We had, as we went walking through, light into the forest all over the place. The mountain laurel had exploded last year. They just went beautifully. There was grass showing up all over the place for feeding the deer. It was like this was turning into a whole new nursery and regrowth. There's still piles of rubble off the side and the trails, and we urge people when they go through, do like Jane and I didn't just pick them up and throw them off the side. But it's coming back nicely. It really is. And I love the work that was done. So congratulations.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Jack. Any other announcements from the commission?
Just an announcement, comment, recommendation. Anyone who didn't, this would be important to everyone along Jack's line of forestry, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are very interested in it. Anyone who didn't get to see the selectmen meeting last night, fairly early on, so you don't have to list the whole thing, Brandon Kibbe gave a very good response to a question regarding forestry, and I would encourage everyone to listen to it. It's one of the best explanations of why and how we should manage our forests that I've heard yet. So I'd encourage everyone to look at it.
Along the same lines, there was a, I don't know if anybody saw it or not, but I saw a link to it on Facebook. Fitchburg Public Access just did one of their weekly or evening shows on forestry management, and they had a couple speakers that came in, and it was really well done.
Excellent.
So it's worth looking at. So I think they have a YouTube channel also, Fitchburg Public Access.
Fitchburg Public Access,
Yeah.
great.
Also, on that same vein, I just received an email from UMass, the Keystone Partnership, and that features a link I'll send. I know I sent it to Rich to take a look at. I'll send it to all you guys. It's all on why it's important to do forest management and the different options that are out there.
Great.
I thought it was,
Yeah, you can send that
it's a
over.
very good resource to do internet research on.
Great. You'll send that? Yeah, thank you.
So if there's no other announcements from the commission, any announcements from the public? I see no announcements from the public. So let's call to order our first meeting. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, public hearing for a notice of intent by Stephen Violet for repairs of a roadway and reconstruction of a bridge deck at 181 Kilburn Street.
Mr. Chairman, at the request of the applicant's representative, who was supposed to be here tonight, but he's unable to appear due to illness, he's requested a continuance to the January 2nd meeting.
Thank you, Matt. I'll accept a motion for continuance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Because we have Richard Birch participating remotely, we'll do a roll call vote on that motion. Richard Birch?
Aye.
Katie Childs?
Aye.
Carl Luck?
Aye.
Jack Rabbit?
Aye.
Ken Jones?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next hearing, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Joseph Nolan for construction of a single-family home at 507 West Townsend Road.
Mr. Chairman, at the request of the applicant, due to the fact that there was an issue with the delineation, which I went out and adjusted with the engineer last week, and we actually just literally got plans in yesterday. They requested a continuance to the January 2nd meeting.
Thank you, Matt. I'll accept a motion for continuance.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Katie Childs,
Aye.
Carl Luck,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit,
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next item on the agenda, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Mark Rude for a septic repair with construction of an addition at 13 East Street.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I did inform them that they needed to be here for this meeting, and I was assured someone would be here, but again, no one's here. So, again, recommend to continue it to the January 2nd meeting. We actually literally just got a file number on it tonight, so I'd like to look at any comments the EP had if they did have any.
Very good, thank you, Matt. I'll accept a motion for continuance to January 2nd.
So moved.
I would recommend that we just continue it until later on in the meeting in case they are delayed in showing up.
Do you accept that
I
amendment?
accept that amendment.
So we have a motion,
Second.
motion and a second. Roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit,
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next item on the agenda, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Nancy Bell for replacement of an existing retaining wall at 51 Fire Road 19.
Mr. Chairman, would request, again, a continuance on that. We just got the DEP number like this afternoon at 5:30.
Do you know if they were planning on coming to the meeting tonight?
No.
They weren't.
No, she told me to inform her when we got the number and she would come to the following meeting. So I'll let her know tomorrow that the number came through this evening.
I would make a motion, we continue that to the January 2nd meeting.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. For the record, Bob Pease, commission member, just showed up.
For the record.
For the record.
Roll call vote on that motion for continuance. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Abstain. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Jack Rabbit.
Yes.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Next item on the agenda, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Kenneth Chenis for an addition to a single-family home with modifications to the patio at 50 Fire Road 24.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, at the last meeting that Mr. Chenis attended, which was a couple of weeks ago, he made some changes that we agreed to, but we were also waiting for a letter from his abutter giving permission for work to be done on his land. And as of yesterday, Mr. Chenis was unable to obtain, so he requested a continuance to the 2nd, figuring he'd have that together. He does have a file number. The only comment DEP had on it was to add the erosion protection, which is, again, something we made him do. So,
Very good, we're on a roll here. I'll accept a motion for a continuance for 50 Fire Road 24 to the January 2nd meeting.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote on that motion. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended, and the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a continued public meeting on a notice of intent by Hickory Hills Association for the approval of a drawdown management plan at Hickory Hills Lake at Townsend Harbor Road.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know that the applicant is actually here.
Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, per historic history, I will recuse myself again because I wasn't intimately involved in the development of this whole project.
Commissioner Rabbit, what's unhistoric history?
I'm not there.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. You know I love you.
All right.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
How you doing, John?
Living the dream. Living the dream.
Please give your name and address.
Richard, I'm John Fortune, 50 Hemlock Drive. I am
Good to
representing
meet you, John.
Hickory Hills Landowners Incorporated Drawdown Committee. Right, so I have sent in, well, obviously we have met several times. I've sent in an appendix to our initial 200 and somewhat pages of information on the drawdown. I sent it in last week. Matt assured me that you guys have at least had the ability to see it, but I'd like to go over that with you.
It's on the
right
cloud
here.
in the lake folder if you guys hadn't found it.
And we summarized it in the past. I added a lot of data that was asked for in the past as well. I'll skip through that if you want, if that's the way you want to go forward, however we want to do it. So I'm kind of looking for feedback, or I'll just go through it.
Why don't you just go through it?
Perfect, okay. So in the appendix, this is DP number 208-1133. I have added a drawdown schedule 2018 with the intent of being at 3 feet drawdown. We are not there yet. And if we get 3 inches of rain on Friday, we will not be there by December 31st. But that was our goal for this year. It's
only going to be 3 inches?
I don't know, someone said 3 inches today.
Two to
I said
five.
only 3?
Oh, really?
2 to 5.
Yeah, 2 to 5?
2 to 5. Sounds like a snowstorm.
If we're there, we're not going to be there. So as we talked about in 2019, 2020, and 2021, we'd go to a 4-foot drawdown. The reason to go 3 years in a row at one depth is really we do not have a lot of data what happened between our 18-inch drawdown and our 3-foot drawdown that we did several years ago. So what we'd like to do is record data starting in the spring, and I'll talk about the data and such that we'll be recording, but start recording data this April 2019, go to the 4-foot drawdown, record data after that drawdown as well, and see how the lake changes, if at all. So the idea of going 3 years in a row is we can watch if there are any significant changes at that 4-foot level, additional 1 foot depth. Then go to 4.5 feet, and then go to 5 feet for a total of 5 feet. That would be our deepest portion that we would go to. That would be in 2023. Go back to 18 inches, which is basically where we are this year by just removing the boards. Then go to a 3-foot, 4-foot, and 5-foot drawdown, a regular cyclical process, allowing the lake to recover every 3 to 4 years. All right, so that would be our goal. Testing. As we've discussed, we would test once monthly from April to October. Starting in 2019, April of 2019, we would test phosphate, nitrate, nitrite, dissolved oxygen, the turbidity, color, pH, and temperature. And then we would continue that testing right through the winter for temperature and dissolved oxygen at multiple depths. And we would pick a location, basically, that's one deeper location in the lake. And the idea for that, the idea for that was to be able to get the idea of the dissolved oxygen and how different it is at multiple depths in the deeper points where the fish are. Sorry, Bob.
I would just say that I would like to add the caveat there is ice safety allows.
As ice safety allows, thank you. That's a good point, because we would not have been able to do it so far this year.
Right.
I'm going to just write that. Thank you, that's a good point. The testing locations, we would test in Hemlock Cove, and the reason for that is it's near a beach and has water flow. There are 2 streams that come into that area, but it's a shallow cove, about 3.5, 4 feet probably. Proctor Cove, which has very little water flow, so we're really looking for the difference of what happens in an area where there is a shallow cove with good water flow and a shallow cove without good water flow. We want to see if there's, if one is more prone to algae than another. In front of the Island Road Beach, at some depth, probably there's an area out in front of that gets about 8 or 9 feet. It's about 100 yards offshore. but it's also near the beach. We have, I brought this to the board of directors, and they would like us to add the Mulpers Brook Inlet, so somewhere in the inlet, so we see the water coming in, because that is our major water source. In front of the dam, that's part of some of the deepest area in the lake, so we would do in front of the dam. And then at Rich's request, at the last meeting, on the east side of Peninsula Drive, somewhere on the east side. I expect that we would also be doing testing in Little Hickory as well, but this whole drawdown is not about Little Hickory, so I didn't add it. Okay. I added in the information that I sent a map, so you would get an understanding of where those locations were for those who weren't familiar with the lake. During drawdown, certainly in the fall, we'd be encouraging residents to remove muck and report the amount of muck that they were removing. We would identify 3 contractors that are qualified to remove the muck for the residents, and the reasons we would work with those particular ones is we are not looking to remove or change the contour of the lake in any way. We just want to be able to take the muck off the top to kill plants as they begin to die off. Post drawdown, we document by observation popularity density of weeds. We'd pick a couple of areas in the lake and just kind of go through and see what's happening with those. We would record fish creels from, we have monthly fishing tournaments that run from April, they're monthly, and run to October. So we'd keep the fish creel that's kept already, and actually I'm told I can have access to the data for many years already, which would be just kind of a good thing to have. Yeah, historical data. And then document any fish kills.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Yes,
John, in the future, let's refer to muck as silt, because what you're referring to is washed-in silt. Because if the commission approves an order and that's included, and I write the word muck removal and the state reads it, they're going to view it as dredging.
Ah, okay.
And the second they see that, it's an automatic, they'll automatically intervene.
It's not really silt. It's the plant matter. It's the leaves and stuff that they're taking out. So
Yeah, well, I mean, we can refer to it as some type of
vegetative
erosion
material
product.
or something.
We have in the
detritus
original,
material, the surface detritus material and silt. Yeah, if I refer to it as muck on the order, they're going to view it as dredging. And even if I try to define it, all they're going to see is the word muck removal, and that's all they're going to see. Yeah, I know this because when you guys wrote the original lake management plan, you referred to that same removal as muck, and it took me a good 20 minutes to clarify that with DEP because they called me on it.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because you're right, because when we did respond, there was a question on that, and we defined what muck was.
It's basically pine needles and leaves.
Yeah,
is all it
exactly,
is,
exactly. But there's terminology for it.
We just have to
which
make
we
sure
there.
that, because that one word is like a major trigger sticking point.
Could you change it to gook? Because that's what I've always called
Or
it
if
when
I
was a
can,
kid.
Well, that depends on the historical history of it.
I'm fine with silt, as long as this board understands the intent of what we're trying to do.
It's the black stuff that's
It's
on
the
the
black stuff that's...
That nobody likes to
gook or
step
goo
in.
or whatever, exactly, that no one wants to walk in. It also holds a lot of phosphate and nitrogen, which is really what we're trying to remove. Drawdown, removal of the dam, I haven't hit the removals, as we've talked about, the removal of dam boards is unregulated, and we do that as big storms come, we work on the dam, we raise and lower the water, that initial 18 inches with those boards, so I have just commented that it is unregulated, that portion of it, but the drawdown begins at the concrete level, which we have defined, although we call that, in my numbers here, the 3-foot level, the 18-inch level is actually at the concrete level where the water comes over. December 1st is the target drawdown date, which means, and I've only just recently learned this, that is the date where we should begin to match the outflow to the inflow of the lake. So it gives us basically 1 month to get the water to the level, whatever level we're trying to get to at that particular year.
Hey, John, just one quick question.
Yep.
And you may have answered this before. Are you under any orders from dam safety on levels for the winter? With all the work you've
I'm
done?
not aware of any. I believe it's just at the concrete level. But
Okay.
are you saying further down than that?
Yeah, if they've mandated a certain level that you have to meet every year because of the dam with the ice
No,
for safety reasons, okay.
no.
If you do ever come across or have anything that you have to draw it to a certain level because of safety of the dam, make sure we just get a copy of it.
Okay,
Just so it's something that can back up your desire to let the water out to a certain level.
right, yep. Just along those lines, I'm sorry, I will say that when dam safety was there and we were doing the overtopping, we did talk about that a little bit, and that the board, we talked about the boards were out. Not put back in before April 1st because of ice, or not put in when there is ice on it. As you remember, I mentioned that one of the conversations we had here.
Okay.
The requirements for drawdown, during drawdown, again, drawdown the lake no more than 3 inches per day or 4 cubic feet per second per square mile of watershed. We have a little over 7 square miles of watershed. Maintain downstream flows of 0.5 cubic feet per second per square mile of watershed. As the water comes back up, water level back up and flowing over the spillway at the concrete level, what I call the concrete level, by April 1st. All right. I've also asked this board, and the Hickory Hills Board of Directors agrees that they are the governing body of the corporation, which includes the lake. They would like to have the final word on any drawdown as long as it falls within the parameters of Lunenburg Conservation's issued order of conditions. The Riffles program, River In-Stream Flow Stewards. Richard was kind enough to introduce us to Michelle Craddock. She's part of the Department of Fish and Game, who is responsible for this Riffles project. She has agreed to come out, although after the beginning of the year, to look at what we might be able to do to understand the flow requirements down below the dam. And there are 2 possible areas, which I talked a little bit to her about. Obviously, water running over the dam runs underneath the street, and there's an area there which would be easy to measure, but that's not all the water that runs through or around the dam. So further downstream, there is, it happens to be a beaver dam at the overlook on the conservation property that's there at the Harley Overlook. Most of the water flows in through that area, so it may make sense to have some measurement criteria down at that point as well. National River Watershed Association, there is 5 years worth of data. I added that to the submission. I took many lines of their data and narrowed it down to just the lines that meant anything to the Malpas Brook. So there is an area just before the lake where the water comes in. It's been measured for, I have since 2013 in there. And there's an area down at Cross Street, Brockelman's property down near the pond there, and they do a measurement as well. I added both of those.
And those are measurement for stream flow?
No, they indicate what the flow is, whether it's heavy or moderate, but there's no numbers.
It's just mostly water quality.
It's mostly water quality,
Okay.
yeah. Dissolved oxygen is a big thing that they're looking for. But that data is available, and I made it available to you. And then lastly, I added, we have had both ACT and Solitude do lake surveys since at least 2012, although some data before I just couldn't get all the data. Do vegetation reports, and I added those 4 reports, a report for 2012, 13, 14, and 16. We just had that done again in 2018, although the report is not yet available. I'll make it available when it is. But I added those to the submission as well, so you could read over those if you wanted. And then I took a summary of data, which was an excerpt from the 2016 report. It gave us some indication of pH, alkalinity, turbidity, conductivity, nitrate, ammonia, nitrogen, phosphorus, dissolved phosphorus, chlorophyll, true color, apparent color, and E. coli since 2003. So the different changes, I added that into the submission as well. So you'd have that just as a summary. All right, so at this point, I'm asking if there's more data that's required, or are we at a point where we could move forward?
Mr. Chairman,
Any comments from the commission?
Just a couple comments. Back up on the the outflow, 0.5 under drawdown. I think you said in words that the downstream flow was during refill, but I might suggest that we just add those words in there during refill so nobody confuses that it needs to be that all the time. Because the one before is during the drawdown. Number 4 relates to only during drawdown, and number 5 relates to only during refill, is my understanding.
Sorry, I did say refill. It really means all time.
I don't think the state requires it to be all time. It's only
right.
during the refill.
Only during refill?
Only during
Okay.
refill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I will add that.
Yeah, on the service dendritis and silt, I hope I got that right. This talks about contractors, which is great, but does that mean it's only allowed by contractors?
No, the residents can remove their muck themselves. Most residents do it with a shovel and a rake.
Is there anything, and some of these questions are for the commission as well as yourself, John. Is there anything that gives the residents guidance in terms of what they can or can't do, or kind of equipment or not equipment, or, I mean,
I think you have a whole thing in your lake management.
Yeah, we
So
have
is there a
whole thing in the
section
lake
that says
management. Yeah.
what's allowed?
And
what's
what we
not?
would do is, if we go forward with this, one of the big things, and actually the better part of not doing it this year, is so we can really push this out for next year, right? Do the marketing, if you will,
Yeah.
for the people on the lake, and put together a single page that says, okay, here are the contractors you can use, here's how you can do it yourself.
Great.
I mean, some people may have a piece of equipment on the wall, but they can't drive it in the water, they can't, I drive mine near the water and I use a pitchfork and throw muck into the bucket, so it's things like that people need to be aware of.
Okay.
So resources and a kind of a do's and don'ts sheet.
Correct, yeah. We're not looking for a swimming pool here, that's not what we're doing.
One quick question about that. You say you're asking the residents to report how much muck they removed. Is it like by the material, whatever?
Material, there you go, material.
Yeah.
You by the bag, by the pound, by the...
What we have
Yard.
done mostly is, by the yard.
Okay.
So we look for the yard. So I know that 4 of the buckets of my tractor, when I fill them up, is a yard, is a cubic yard. Yeah.
So as long as the
And
report,
people,
that reporting is
wheelbarrows are an eighth of a
standardized.
yard or
Yeah.
whatever, but yes, we
So if that's
use
sort
some
of
kind of a standard,
standardized.
yeah.
I know last year I had to do a computation, I'd take it out in 5-gallon buckets, so I had to figure out how many gallons there were.
Well,
Bob's an
Quite a
overachiever,
few.
that's the thing.
quite a few. Okay, well, that's good, because I think we have another lake in town that would be interested in that same thing, so having it defined is great, and we can refer them to that.
Yeah, again, we can make that available. The data that we have or make available is available for everybody.
Super. That was all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I just like to say,
Yes.
I think I like seeing John at our meetings, but I think we've really...
You had enough?
I think personally, I've seen enough information. I think I'm ready to vote on this tonight. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think, we've
I'm
been
seeing
doing this
nodding
for a
heads
long
and-
time.
Yeah.
I agree, Ken.
I'd like to put this thing to bed.
All right, do you want to make a motion?
Actually, I did have just one other question, or one other update perhaps, on the drawdown schedule, if we just have as approved annually by the commission. So this is the drawdown schedule proposed, depths to be approved annually by the LCC. That way there, it allows us to update it if we don't want to go, if we want to stop, if we want to go deeper.
Yeah, I would expect that in the order of conditions as well, that it does say there's an annual review of the data that we have
Yep.
before we move forward with the next year's. And again, the board of directors at Hickory Hills wants the same thing. So,
Okay. No, other than that, it's much easier having it all in one spot now to be able to find it on the tip of your fingers. So thank you very much, John.
Yep.
Very good.
Well done.
The only other thing I might suggest is that other than everything is here, but perhaps just continue until he gets Michelle Craddock on site and gets the measurement, a process to measure the water flow, just in case they can't come up with it there. We have to come up with some other criteria for it. But other than that, all the data we have is exactly what we're requiring.
We have some measurement techniques today that we've been using. You know, and I think we've defined those in the original submission. I think this Riffles program is a fine program, and it's probably, you know, may or may not be more accurate, I'm not sure. And so we're certainly willing to do that, but I think we can fall back to the measurement criteria that we've been using as well.
Okay. And I know one of my biggest concerns, of course, is the reviewing body is making sure that the measurement techniques you're using are certified, so that an engineer or somebody is dropping their stamp on saying, yes, these numbers are correct. Because unfortunately, none of us have the capacity of figuring out fluid dynamics to figure out how much water is actually going over the dam and down the river.
Yep.
So we just need to have somebody willing to put their expertise on paper and say, yes, this is accurate.
John, could you remind, the fallback technique is what, using the pipe to flow through the pipes, or?
Well, we have a formula, there's a formula actually, and again, it's in the original submission, for each of the pipes, the flow of water through each of the pipes. It takes into consideration the size of the pipe, the type of pipe, and the height at which the water is coming down that pipe. It's a siphon. And as well as a shootout. There's an angle at the bottom, so we can determine how far the water is shooting out away. So we have a way to determine the flow of water that way.
Okay.
But it has not been certified. It's we have all the equations for it, you know, and that's how we came to determine what we have today.
Okay. So, but to me, that's, you know, finalizing and put a rib around it, but that's a conservative estimate, because as you say, there's other water that goes around and under and everything else. So
There's a lot of leakage, that's right.
that's a
Yeah,
conservative
and
number.
and that's the point that, you know, I think when we talked to Michelle, this is not the only place water flows
Right.
below the dam.
Right.
Because even if it stops, the water doesn't stop flowing below.
Absolutely.
The Mulpus River doesn't stop.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I am certainly ready to vote tonight, and I'm very comfortable with the flow measurement methods that have been presented to date.
I am as well.
All right. I will accept a motion to approve this notice of intent by the Hickory Hills Association, with the caveat that I think by the springtime, we'll have an established method to measure stream flow.
That the drawdown schedule will be approved annually by the LCC, that the winter measurements will be taken as ice safety allows.
So we have a motion?
We do.
Second. And we'll do a roll call vote. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Well done,
Great,
guys.
thank you.
All right.
Thanks, John.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
Yeah. Come on before spring.
All right, thank you. Yeah. You weren't here. Yeah, that's right. Good job. All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Merry Christmas.
We'll open our next hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Stephen Powell to prevent runoff from discharging from the site located at 151, 181 Leominster Shirley Road.
Hey, Matt, can you just spin me so I can see the plan?
Todd, can you spin them?
Beautiful.
We need one of those little rotating things you can have a remote to, so you can make it.
Hey, Matt, what was the date of the original hearing on this?
I have to look it up. I believe it was November 28th.
28th.
Yeah,
November 28th.
it was 28th.
Always perfect. You got a last.
Oh, man. Don't forget it.
Did you get the Supergirl pose when you get home? because that's what I usually get, one of these.
Session. No, good. I don't need the Mullins report.
So, my name's Brian Marchetti, McCarty Engineering. Here tonight with Scott Morrison with Ecotech, our wetlands consultant, and Steve and Jeff Powell, the applicant. As I said, we met on the 28th. We discussed the project. There were other questions that came out posed by the commission, requesting additional information about the project that was permitted back in 2011, just to compare development areas of what was proposed, the amount of impervious, the amount of disturbance, as opposed to what was actually constructed. So I did prepare so this first figure, which shows that area breakout, this was the design from 2011. Consisted of the green space is the pervious area, the light gray hatch is pavement, brown is building, gray is gravel area. This gray gravel area was intended to be used for the same gravel processing operations that are occurring in this area. So total impervious, meaning pavement and building, was 86,171 square feet. The gravel area was 117,000 square feet. So if you're looking at the impervious area of 86 with the building versus what was actually built, which is what you see down here, the total impervious area, meaning this gray area in the portable garages that are out there, is 38,000 square feet, 462. So if you're looking at the total impervious from 2011, it was 86,000. 2018 plan totals at 38,000. So the delta is about, it's less than, it's actually greater than an acre. It's 47,000 and change less out there now impervious than what was previously proposed to be built. So that's just an overall snapshot about impervious, pavement, building. Obviously the delta goes over to the gravel area. Sure. What wasn't built out is gravel and remains gravel today. So approved versus actual. Let's see here. So, you know, overall we go back to the original plan. We did meet with planning board a week or so ago, and just for background, we met with planning board, we discussed the project with them, keeping wetlands out of their consideration. They liked the plan, they approved, or were ready to approve the idea of the berm. So the overall design intent for what we're showing. Their third-party consultant, Graves Engineering, reviewed the whole submittal package, drainage design. They did have a couple of minor comments just about shape and size of the basin, things like that. But overall, at the meeting, he expressed his approval of the plan, and the planning board actually said that they were ready to approve the plan as designed, but we're going to hold off and continue this to a February meeting, just so we have a month to work with the commission. They don't want to approve the design as it was and then have changes made now during conservation. They have to go back and amend it. So the changes that you see here on the plan, really all it was the shape and grade of this basin. Same location, same shape, same berm size, same elevations. They want a little bit more detail about knowing what the high water elevation, the 100-year storm event's going to be, the actual design of the berm. They wanted to have an impervious core. So we added more detail to the plans about showing that specific design information. Berm's in the same location. We added an emergency spillway. We added the details about the construction of the berm being an impervious core.
We added a spillway, emergency spillway elevation, which is at 371, so it's a foot below the elevation that's top of the berm. And I wanted to note that the 100-year storm event for this whole tributary area is only at about 368 and change. So we've got 3+ feet of freeboard, or 3 feet of freeboard for the 100-year storm event. This is pure gravel and sand. It's very porous. That's why we're doing what we're showing here. All the stormwater for this design is going to be contained on site. There'll be no runoff, leaving no point source runoff. It's all going to be recharging the groundwater. The berm, as designed, contains everything on this east side of the site, as well as we originally showed the berm on this side. This whole property, there's only a couple areas over here that were graded to get to these wetlands. It'll all be regraded now to come down to the natural low point, which is here at this corner.
So that's going to pick up the flow from the entire site.
So the entire site will run, and remember, it's all pervious, it runs across the area. A lot of it recharges on the way. As it's going. And yes, and we'll get to here. So that brings up another point that was made while there was concern about, will the new grading design diminish the size of these wetlands? If we don't have the same tributary areas flowing to the east and west wetlands, what's going to happen? This was the second figure I put together to kind of contradict that point. So back previous to 2011, David Ross Associates did a wetland delineation and a field survey of the whole area. As part of this permitting process, we had Ecotech come out and do another wetland delineation, and we had Topper Land Survey come out and do a new topographic survey. So I want to show you how the dark wetland color here is the wetland area from 2011. And the light area is the wetland area as of this year. So this wetland here actually increased by 60,000 square feet. So it's well over an acre and a half. This wetland has increased in the last 8 or so years. And then comparing the wetlands on this side, this wetland here, this whole field meadow in the front here is very wet. It's all wet now. This increased by 50,000 square feet. And then there was minimal change on these here to the east. This one here was reduced by about 700 square feet. And the red areas here are just deltas between the old delineation and the new delineation. The flags weren't still out there, so there's always going to be a little bit of change. And this one here was about a 4,000 square foot reduction between these. So all in all, there's 104,688 square feet more wetlands on site today than there was back in 2011.
So about 2.5 acres.
Yeah. So it's a pretty significant increase in the last 7 or 8 years. I wanted to.
Why is that, Brian?
Why is that? I honestly don't know. It's all I can think of is, the more water is coming. I think down here gets a lot of water from the MBTA rail. Stuff goes off of Lumsden Shirley Road. I'm sure, just the change in surface cover on the property could have added to more groundwater recharging quicker, not getting, uptaken by trees, or who knows? I really don't know. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie.
Does the fact that we had historically huge amount of rain in the last 4 months have anything to do with it?
I wouldn't say the 4 months, the last several years. The climate is changing, clearly. These wetlands don't have a point source. They're not on a stream, at least on this side.
These wetlands delineations, are they based on soils, or are they based on vegetation, or are they based on both?
Both. Yep.
So you take cores as well as go out and look at vegetation?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that could have been a difference too between the old survey and this. I don't know if they just did a vegetation survey or.
Hey, Ryan, if you could help me, go back to what was originally approved. And basically, we intruded beyond what had been improved. Is that correct? Would that be correct?
All I'm showing here is the limit of what was approved. We have, so the current
You have,
plan,
right.
yes. Yeah.
You have?
Yes.
So I guess, being a quality guy and a process guy, how did that happen?
So,
And what's to stop it from continuing? What do you have in place? And, so you wanted diagnostics on how it happened, and what are you doing to prevent anything like that in the future?
so we discussed how it happened last meeting. Powell's purchased this property from Padula's. They had their garage up the street. They were gonna build a garage here.
Yeah.
Span. That was 2011. And while this was under construction, Padula Brothers sold this lot and this lot to the Powells.
Yeah.
And during construction, they continued working. We understand it was done without a permit. That's why we're here now.
Right.
So,
So,
I mean, what's to stop it from happening now? We're here now. There is no more property to purchase beyond here. The property to the, further to the east right here is all Leominster Rod and Gun Club. So we're landlocked now by Leominster Rod and Gun Club property. And Powell Stone and Gravel property over here where the retail center is. And the MBTA. So there's no future area
your
to
processes basically failed to recognize the previous commitments that were made. Is that correct? Would that be correct?
expand. What do you mean by that?
Meaning that you purchased a piece of property, there were clearly documents out there in the deed that says, hey, this is as far as you go, but you still the operation continued to expand without even referencing that? Would that be, I guess I can't understand why when, honestly, you guys are awesome. You know your business really well. That's what you do for a living. And that happened. So I think in my mind, that's a major process failure. And yeah, I don't know what your answer is. Well, I'm out of land to do that again. Nah.
Well, no, you're asking me what's to stop it from happening again.
Yeah.
We don't own the land. So, and I'll be honest, I'm on board with the Powells now. I do all their engineering. So when they buy land and they have a plan to do something, it's all on the table, it's up front.
Yeah.
This was done, we understand it was done improperly, it was done illegally.
And
It's-
essentially without permission.
Yes.
And essentially, at the end of the day, that's illegal, right? Okay, so we're with that point. And you're not telling, so it just happened. In the meantime, we've destroyed a big chunk of habitat along the lakefront, I'm sorry, I'm jet lagged all hell. And we've destroyed that. And while I appreciate the fact that, okay, Mother Nature's creating more wetland, I've still lost all that habitat along that stream. And you're offering to put a berm up to keep the things washing in, and I appreciate that. I don't even know if it's even with the soils in there. My observation is there's so much sand there, I don't think anything will ever wash up against that berm. But I appreciate that, but the reality is, we did it illegally, and secondly, we've destroyed a big chunk of habitat, and that's what we're charged to do, is to protect this habitat. And so I'm interested in seeing what you would do to remediate back to what was originally your agreed contract and permit.
Well, so we're not denying this was done improperly.
Right.
That's why we're here now to permit this, moving forward and permit it right. So our goal here is to modify the site as it is now and fine tune and tweak it to maintain as much of this usable area as possible, because this is the area that Powell Stone and Gravel uses for their day-to-day operations.
And I dearly appreciate that.
Yep.
And I think that at the end of the day, though, I still lost a pile of habitat.
You did.
And it's
I understand
still-
that.
And we still lost, and something illegal happened, and it was a failure.
So
I'd love to see something that talks about remediating at least a good portion of that area that was taken.
So this property that was purchased is 25.9 or 6 or 9 acres. It's almost 26 acres. The area that's cleared today and disturbed is just over 13 acres. So it's a significant area, yes, but it's about 50% of the lot that was cleared. 50% of that area is still all habitat. This is the 100-foot buffer zone here. The existing tree line it pretty much follows that 100-foot buffer zone all the way around the site.
It shows the entire parcel.
Well, the entire parcel is this line right here, which this is all the open pond. So the piece you're not seeing is the pond, and, you know, and I only have the window this size. I don't want to scale it down even further.
Just, Brian, I have a question for you. Actually, a couple questions. One, the pink line, if I'm not mistaken, on there is the
Inner and outer
200 foot.
riparian. So this is
So
the
that's outer
outer
riparian.
This is the
Right.
inner riparian, yes.
And then in between on the right side of the page, in between the inner riparian boundary and the outer riparian boundary, you have your berm, and then you're also going to have your detention basin in there,
The
correct?
basin it's the natural low point, so I'm building the berm in here just to create the boundary.
Can you trace on there where the berm's going to be? So
The shaded line here
Yes.
is the top of the berm.
That's the berm.
So you see all the grading here, so
Yep.
the top of our berm starts down here. So per the detail, it's going to, you know, you're gonna see a berm at the detention basin here. It's 5 feet wide at the top for the length of the basin. Beyond the limits of the basin, it's a 2-foot wide berm, 2 feet high.
And you're going to vegetate the berm, correct?
Berm will be vegetated. yes.
Okay. So as you trace that, I
Traced
get,
on here? or-
yeah, just
Just in the basin area, or do you want the whole thing?
just
thing.
along the entire, perfect.
And we're doing this to create a hard barrier.
Yep. So the area between the berm and the outer riparian on the right side of the page.
Yes.
Approximately, what's the area that covers?
So, let's see here.
Todd, are you asking about this area right here?
Correct.
So, this whole area, I don't have individual numbers for just this impact.
You can approximate it based on the scale there. I'm just trying to get a sense for what size that area is. Is it 4 acres? Is it 2 acres? I have a scale here if you want it.
Yes, it is. I don't have my scale. So 60, I would call it, you know, 350 by 60?
350 by 60? What is that in square feet?
So 20, a little over 20,000.
So we have about 20,000 square
No,
feet.
sorry, let me take that back. I used the wrong scale. It's about 500 by 80. So it's about an acre.
So we have about an acre of land there that was disturbed. Yet what he's just gone through is that we now have about 2.5 acres more wetland already on the site, based on what they've done.
Different location and probably subject to, Hey, if I could ask one other question? Okay,
So-
where's the if this is the 200-foot lot mark, where's the 200-foot mark coming along here?
The stream ends here.
The stream ends here? Oh, this is not a stream?
So this is a pond. This is a
Pond?
a wetland.
All pond,
So the stream
wetland?
ends down here, so the
Okay,
riparian
so,
zone.
and this is 100 feet off?
Yes, the 100 is right underneath the hay bale line.
Okay.
So all the development, keeping on the
Okay.
100 here. So, and there's actually also a provision in the act that speaks to stormwater controls, structural stormwater controls within the riparian zone. Calculations shall also exclude areas used for structural stormwater management measures, provided there's no practical alternative to siting these structures within the riverfront area, and provided a wildlife corridor is maintained. So, you know, per the letter of the law, this is the low point of the site. So this area that's included for our detention basin, if you take it up to the 100-year elevation, would exclude this entire impact up to this elevation right here. You know, so I understand your point. We've impacted the riparian zone. I understand that. But the act does allow impact within a riparian zone, as long as you stay under a threshold. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say. We're modifying things, we're changing things to make this site better, but we're doing it within the letter of the law. So, it's, in my opinion, and certainly with the applicant, in order to give up this whole acre plus, it's an impact to their operation. It's financial impact. It's, which those are all considered in the alternatives analysis. And DEP did comment on the alternatives, and that's really why I wanted Scott to come here tonight. He provided a response to all the DEP comments, specifically to the alternatives analysis. And we've tried repeatedly in the last couple of weeks to get in touch with the reviewer to discuss these, and we haven't gotten a call or an email back. So, I wanted him to be here
Yeah.
to speak to it and discuss it.
I'd be happy to go through that. I think ultimately what happened was Mass DEP asked for a performance standards evaluation for the particular site. I put that together. I've got additional copies. I can hand them out. And I'd be happy to kind of go through this. It may answer a number of questions. So it's a lengthy letter, but what I tried to do was add the requirements and performance standards followed by a response, so that the commission it was completely transparent and clear that if you want to take the time and review everything, it's right there.
So can you just review the structure of the letter?
Absolutely. So there's specific performance standards required for work in riverfront area. The first one is that you must meet the performance standards for all other resource areas. We're doing works proposed within riverfront area, but there's no other additional wetland impacts. So we're not impacting any other resource areas, and therefore we don't need to meet any performance standards for additional resource areas. The second requirement is you can't impact estimated priority habitat of rare species or vernal pools. We check the maps. There's no mapped estimated or priority rare species on the site, along with no certified vernal pools on the property. The third item is practical and substantially equivalent economic alternative. If you were to restore this area here, you're essentially restoring about an acre, I think we said, of commercial area that would essentially restrict the Powells from doing any work within that section of the riverfront area. So based upon that, I don't know what the cost of an acre of commercial property in town is, but my guess would be it's got to be at least $100,000 worth of space that they would not be able to use. So by eliminating that is not a substantially equivalent economic alternative. So as such, we look at that standard, and by restoring that, you wouldn't meet that standard. Item D would be the no significant adverse impact. That requires that as a maximum, you're only allowed to impact 10% of the total riverfront area on the site. This proposed project impacts 8.5% of the total riverfront area on the site. So essentially, just over 41,000 square feet of impact for their operation. So if you look at that, 8.5% is that number. So you're about 11 acres of riverfront area remains untouched on the property. So a substantial amount of the riverfront area will remain.
And I want to note there, if I can, if, according to this provision, if we exclude what we're using for stormwater control area, the percentage goes down even further.
So
Your figures are including the proposed detention basin?
correct,
And if we excluded the proposed detention basin, we go down even more?
even more.
Thank you.
So, and then the last item is you're required to meet stormwater management. Brian's evaluated, proposing stormwater system on the site, so we're fully compliant with the stormwater management standards.
And as I said, Graves did review it, and they were in agreement with what we proposed here. DEP did have one comment about claiming 80% TSS for an infiltration basin. My drainage calcs that I submitted were purely for the front infiltration basin. You know, she said I didn't provide a forebay for this back basin. There's no forebay designed, there's no forebay intended. The forebay is sized based on 0.1 inches of runoff over the impervious area that discharges to the basin. We have no impervious area discharging to the basin. This is 100% the gravel processing area that's designed to contain 100% of the runoff on site. So if she's saying we can't claim 80%, you know, nothing's discharging, 100% of the runoff's infiltrating. So I just think there's a little misunderstanding of what the intent was here.
Is this, oh,
Go ahead, Bob.
So the Mass DEP comment was just a short little paragraph at the beginning where it talks about, you know, how the general performance standards, you know, have been addressed.
This section in italics is the section from the regulations.
I understand, that's the regulations, but but the DEP request was the little thing at the top to talk about how are the performance standards addressed.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you, I understand.
does this document include all of the DEP responses?
This provides the
No, does it have everything that the DEP, did you respond to everything that was written in the DEP statements? And could we see a copy of what the DEP responded to you with?
I think it's in the DEP file number.
Yeah, it's in the file number online. I'll pull it up right now.
Yeah, they asked for a performance standards evaluation, and they questioned the forebay, which the forebay in stormwater was reviewed by Graves Engineering.
And I initially responded to Matt Merrill in an email with, you know, my comments. I can certainly compile them all in one document with this as the address to the other one, just for clarity and convenience.
Go ahead.
Question? The wetlands that you have delineated on this map are the ones, the new current delineation, the 30 and 50 foot, 100 foot?
Yes.
Are all?
Everything here is the 2018 design.
And that's what you intend on protecting
Yes.
going forward?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Carl.
We keep talking about retention basin. I'm not sure where. Can you sort of outline or show where the retention basin is down in that right corner? Yeah, down there?
So down here, so the topography of this whole site,
Yeah.
this is the low point.
Okay.
So right here in this whole bottom corner. So this is not meant to be a, you know, structurally built, loam seated forebay. This is a low point with a large berm that we're building up along the backside.
The entire site's.
So this whole area, you see the topography has a
Yep.
curvilinear nature here. We've got elevation 365 and 66, 67, 8, 9, 370. So depending on the storm event and how much water we get, this berm top elevation is 372. So 372 contour is back here. So literally this entire area back to here would have to fill up with stormwater, you know, 6 feet deep in the lower end to grade back here, for that to happen. And
So, but there's no activity in that area? that you just-
well, this is part of the gravel, the processing area.
So there is processing in that?
But now we're maintaining, we're setting aside a portion of the property now that is dedicated now to, you know, detaining stormwater during storm events. There are no storm events, low flow, nothing's happening. This is still an area where they have access roads where they come through. So in the event of a rainfall event where water comes there, even during the biggest storm events this year, this is already the low point of the site. Water was only retained for a day or so, nothing stayed longer than that.
But, so there wouldn't be any future use for that in that area or piling of?
Well, no, they wouldn't be stockpiled. I mean, they certainly could stockpile around the vicinity, but the point is nothing discharges from the property. So, you know, it's not like they're gonna fill this whole area.
Well, that's not quite.
They're not going to vegetate it or anything like that.
Not going to vegetate, I understand that.
No, so the way we laid this out is right in front of the berm, 20-foot flat area. And that 20-foot flat area is for ease of maintenance. They can come down with a loader and scrape it out as, it's a sedimentation basin, so it's a gravel site. You're gonna have sediment and silt running off this thing constantly. So this is an area in the front here where it's easily maintainable, and then the general topography slopes up onto the property.
I guess I sort of see what Carl's getting at. I mean, if material is piled up in that whole area, does it take up the volume that you're using for your site?
Yeah, understood. Right now, there's loam piles right here. Yeah. But there won't be. This is...
Can we get that shown on the plan?
Yeah, so it's sort of a keep-out area, right? Where, I mean, 'cause I can...
Yeah, they can still drive through it, but they're not gonna
drive through
stockpile
it, but-
mounds of stuff.
Yeah, there won't be
Yes,
piles
absolutely.
of ground hot top there.
That would be helpful if you
Anymore.
could show that on the plan.
How frequently will, as it silts up, how frequently will you check the elevations there and then regrade it and scrape the silt out and all that stuff?
I think that's something.
Annually, biannually?
Well, I think that's something that, you know, I'd like to see as a condition that we come back in a year and report to you and tell you what happened, just so you can be comfortable with, we're doing this for a reason. This is a maintainable plan. We're not trying to get away with anything. This is now how the site's gonna operate from here on out. So I can certainly show that stormwater detention area, you know, with a hatch on here or something like that. You know, and we'll formulate an operation maintenance plan that we submit. I didn't submit all the stuff until I get buy-in from you guys, so I can pinpoint exactly what you need. So there will be some sort of operation maintenance plan. You know, the maintenance of this basin, it's a sedimentation basin. I did this for aggregate in Saugus years ago. Very similar thing. And huge site, a giant site. And you know, this thing really barely needed to be cleaned out. It was so big that the water came in, infiltrated, and disappeared. And you know, what's flowing down here, it's all gravel from clean sand and stuff. It doesn't really clog up the pores in here. So it was something that the operation and maintenance plan, I believe we had it was only twice per year. It was twice per year the first year, and then based on annual data, we went back to the commission and reported, and it ended up being a once-a-year thing.
Can you come up here to the microphone, Mr. Powell?
We've been running.
Don't hurt yourself.
So we've been running, you know, in this area for 5 years or whatever it is now, and without any of this, and have never had any discharge off the site. You know, the site, like Brian said, when it rains, it goes down. So now with adding all these berms and these detention, you know, or whatever you call them, depressions, you know, this is, you know, over and above. So, you know, we feel that, you know, it's working now, so now we're just,
This is a belt and suspenders
yeah,
solution.
exactly.
So if I understand the direction you're going, Brian, if a lot of that area that's, you know, in that delta is sort of keep-out area for piling stuff or processing, then in my mind, it's really not affecting the outer riparian. It's leaving it as untouched as it is today. So I don't know that, it's not clear to me that you're losing the whole acre. If you have a keep out of that 200, then isn't that what we're after?
Well, I want to be clear about the keep out. I mean, it's going to be still part of the ground processing area. It's not a stockpiling area. Like, they're still going to drive machines, you know, trucks through to get to the other sides of it.
Okay.
During storm events, it's going to fill up with water. You know, we're not saying we're going to take this whole area here and, you know.
No, I'm just looking at the 200-foot riparian down to the
Yeah,
berm.
here,
That little corner there. If that was kept, you know, a keep out, or, you know, maybe a road through it, but.
Well, and it's kind of I tried to make a point last time too, is this is all going to be revegetated behind it. So behind the berm, it's going to be a vegetated berm. New England Wetland Products provides one of the comments that I made is we provide some sort of wetland seed mix, but it's not really a wetland seed mix. It's a conservation erosion control mix for dry areas. This is a berm. This is going to be
It's going to be a dry area.
Right.
This isn't going to be a wet berm. So and I told Ray, I said, tell us what you want. I mean, this is what I would expect. This is what I put on the plan. But it's going to be a dry erosion control mix, which is going to vegetate and it's going to grow forever. This isn't a berm that you're going to be out there with lawnmowers.
Right.
It's going to
be naturalized.
Yeah. And to be honest, what's out there now, the natural grades, you know, they do continue to depress in here, but, you know, in a significant storm event, it could flood over and exceed the elevation of the natural power field here, and eventually possibly get down to it. You know, we're creating a 6-foot-tall, hard, impermeable core barrier now. Nothing will ever get through this barrier to the riparian zone, to the stream that's down here. And it, you know, it supports our case, but this, to me, is more of a buffer than any vegetated trees. And, you know, if we had to revegetate this riparian zone to keep it water from the grades that it's at now, this is a hard...
Essentially, you're building a levee for a dry site.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have some additional questions about the technical comments from the DEP. You know, the first comment about, you know, how the project meets general performance standards, you address that in that letter, that's great. Then it talks about the exiting grades, 365 to 368, closest to the basin appear lower than the proposed basin elevation, 369. Are there contours missing from the plan that would change these grades?
So that was Graves' comment to why I now graded the basin levels.
Okay.
We were previously proposing to fill this area to keep it very flat with a lower berm, which intuitively, I understand that comment, it didn't make much sense. So I've revised the plan now to address Graves' concerns.
And then it says, you know, infiltration basins must have a sediment forebay in accordance with the stormwater handbook. Without a sediment forebay, the basin does not receive 80% TSS removal credit. Was that your comment about the whole thing's just draining to there, so you don't want to have like this? Is that like, when they say a sediment forebay?
Sediment forebay it's sized based on the impervious area discharging to it. So it's 0.1 inches of runoff times the total impervious area. Gives you a volume that you're supposed to store and treat before it gets into the infiltration basin. We're not doing that. This is not an infiltration basin per the letter of the...
So on that portion of the site, everything that drains towards there is pervious.
Yes, this whole thing is pervious. Everything comes with pervious.
So the TSS requirement in the forebay is not applicable because you don't have any impervious.
Yes, and the basin is designed in the DEP regulations to have an outlet. So it says you're treating the water to a certain rate before it's discharged. We're not discharging anything. So this is not your typical situation. This isn't a basin for the bylaw, for the regulation. 100% of what flows on here is getting infiltrated. Nothing's getting out. So we're getting 100% TSS removal.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's what I said. I just think she didn't understand kind of what, because I did speak in the drainage report to the existing infiltration basin that was in front of the site by the scale house. You know, that was built and permitted back in 2011. You know, that has a forebay. That was built according to the plan, so that was, I think, maybe where she was thinking, this is what I was talking about.
But that's for the impervious pavement
That's for the
stuff
pavement,
up in front. That's not for this area, right?
Correct.
And the original detention basin with the forebay, that was sized for twice as much impervious as what's been constructed, correct? Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I had a couple comments.
Go ahead, Richard.
Number one, back to the growing wetland to the north. So we've grown that by 2.5 acres in the 5 years since the grading's taken place.
2011, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's since 2011, based on the 2011 well delineation versus today's delineation. It's 60,000 square feet, so about 1.5 acres.
Okay, so over 5 or 6 years, we've grown it 1.5 acres. What's going to happen in the next 5 years if we don't try to readjust the runoff to the way it was pre-development?
We adjust the runoff the way it was pre-development, we're discharging more runoff to it. I mean, there's no...
Yeah, but you're just going to flood that little hole there, and you're going to end up, I mean, you had a couple separated wetlands, you had some wet uplands, I mean, you had the area, and the area is contained all the way around it. At this point, it's been developed on all 4 sides, and you're dumping more water in there than permeates out of it. I mean, clearly. We're going to continue to do that. Over time, we're going to make a pond, and it's just going to flow over the road, or what's going to happen with this wetland as it continues to flood?
The current design for these lots takes more area away from it. So we're not discharging more.
So we're regrading the existing conditions today so that we're going to have more flow going east and south?
Yes, so this...
Than we do today?
Is being graded. There's a break right through here that currently today goes that way, and it will all be graded back to this side.
But how long's that break been there, Brian? I mean, we're obviously at some point in 5 years, we've we've created or flooded an acre and a half more.
Well, this break, how long is this?
What's to say that we're not gonna continue to increase the water into that,
Right, 5 years.
contained wetland system?
I mean, I think what we're doing now is gonna reduce that. I mean, I can't really,
How do we know?
because we're grading area away from it. It's,
Yeah, have you compared your elevations and your, runoff to pre-development and post-development?
yes, it's in the drainage analysis. Yep.
Okay.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that that wetland, you know, I think raising the water elevation in that wetland, you know, a couple inches may have caused that large area, because, you know, that wetland, those wetlands are relatively level, whereas once you go beyond where it's delineated, you start to creep up. So I don't think it's going to grow anymore just because of the topography.
Okay, so you're saying that that wetland now has reached its maximum size, we're not gonna have to worry about it flooding more as we go down the road?
God knows.
I mean, no offense, now's the time to fix it and get the grading proper so that we don't have a growing problem.
Well, what we are doing as part of this is grading to the limit of your buffer zone away from that property.
Yep.
So we're doing as much as we can on this.
So now we're taking,
away from that wetland,
okay, so all of the water's gonna be running south and east,
all running east.
away from the wetland.
What's the elevation of the water in the wetland?
I don't know if we have a water elevation, but we've got topo.
Or at the edge, you know? You know, and then my next question is, what's the elevation out here? Could this be infiltrating here and then flowing underwater over here?
No,
or-
it's a lot
Yes,
lower.
it is. This is about 365
Yeah.
out in this wetland. Or, yeah, 365, we're up at 376, 78 up here.
What about down there, Brian?
Down here, we're at 368.
So, but the water that infiltrates here, could it be going down and then traveling underground over here?
I think that's.
Or is it just raising the
the
entire water table on the site? Because you're getting more infiltration, so that may be.
There are no streams feeding this wetland, so it's purely groundwater and surface water fed. So there's no river, you know, discharging to it to maintain it. So, you know, the nature of the site, it's gravel. The water that falls on is gonna infiltrate, you know? Down here, we're 15 to 20 feet higher than this wetland, in this location where our pond is. We're much higher here. But right now, we're about 10 feet higher up on this side. But, you know, this whole site back here is relatively flat.
Have you done any test pits on the gravel operation side or anything like that that shows what the elevation of the groundwater is and compared it to where it is in the wetlands? I suspect the wetlands probably closely reflect whatever your groundwater elevation is.
So down here, you're at about 355, the water. It's about 365 over here. So there's 10 feet of difference, grade change in water surface elevation
Yeah.
between this wetland and this wetland. And that's the general slope of grade also drops from there down to here, so it seems to follow 10 feet below grade at this point, 10 to 15 feet below grade.
So based on that, if you did a series of wells across there, I suspect if you mapped your groundwater elevation profile, you'd be flowing towards
Should be flowing down this way.
towards the eastern pond and the stream.
And that's why I didn't propose any excavations for the pond. I left it at grade. My initial design was raising it a little bit just to, because we didn't do test pits to see if we had several feet of, but, you know, being 15 to 20 feet lower than grade out here, it's pure gravel out here. It's very intuitive. The groundwater elevation is low, real low here. There's not going to be any issues with recharging. So, I mean, I can't speak to why it's growing. It is what it is. I mean, we're doing what we can now to pull it away, and it's still growing.
Any more comments, Richard?
Yeah, the other comment I do have is, you know, this site was developed in 2012 without proper permitting. So at this point, I think we're setting a dangerous precedence in allowing the riverfront infiltration to stand. Where it is a clear violation. Now, the regulation in the general performance standard states practicable and substantially the same. I haven't seen anything to say that, you know, a 13-acre gravel process area was not economically viable. There had to be a 14 acre or 15 acre gravel processing area. You know, in your alternatives analysis, you mentioned that in 2012, when you permitted the first area, the 9.5 acres, you were doing a gravel process yard. Purchased this lot midway through to increase the gravel process yard. I mean, technically, the gravel process yard was economically viable on the first piece of property. So anything above and beyond that on the second piece of property should have just increased it. I don't think the general performance standard is there to allow for maximum allowable usage of the property. I think that's where the riverfront protection is different and greater than it is in the wetland protection, because it does tell us that we have to review the economic viability of a project first and foremost. You know, and you're leaving us with, what was the final number? 30,000, 40,000 square feet of riverfront disturbance as a violation that we're allowing, where at this point, no evidence has been presented to tell us that it was not viable staying out of the riverfront.
Well, the performance standards is substantially equivalent economic alternative, so I would indicate that gaining an acre of commercial space while still meeting the performance standards, you know, had they not done this and they needed to gain that extra acre, you know, that's a sizable amount of, I wouldn't say that losing that or not having it in the first place is substantially equivalent to not encroaching. So for instance, let's say they had 10 acres of area, commercial area that they could use. By still meeting the performance standards and adding an acre of commercial space, you know, what's commercial space, acre of commercial property in town, $100,000 or something? I think that's clearly not a substantially equivalent economic alternative when you start.
Yeah, but I don't think the standard was set for a maximum build out using the riverfront. If a gravel operation of 13 acres outside of the riverfront is a viable operation, then that does not permit you to make a 14 acre gravel operation that is more profitable inside the riverfront. I think that flies in the face of what the regulation was set forth to determine. I mean, if you have 13 acres outside of the riverfront and you want to put in a 14 acre gravel operation, I don't think the regulations would allow that if a 13 acre gravel operation was viable.
But I think if we were at 12 acres.
And I mean, this is just in the regulations, and I did call and talk to Judy about this a little bit. And if it's viable at 13 acres, whether it's the best, most profitable use of the property, if it is viable at 13 acres outside the riverfront, you're supposed to stay outside the riverfront.
Who makes the judgment that's viable?
But the standard says there must be no practical and substantially equivalent economic alternative to the proposed project with less adverse effects on the interest identified. And so it doesn't say it has to be economically feasible, it says there has to be a practicable and substantially equivalent economic alternative.
Right.
And so, to me, I think you're using the wrong standard, Richard. I think, it's through the chairman. I think the standard is substantially equivalent economic alternative rather than economically viable alternative.
I think if we were here, you know, and this was done and we stayed out of that riparian zone in 2011 or 12 when this was built, you know, 6, 7, 8 years later, you know, our operation requires the extra area, we could come back and permit this area. It still is underneath the performance standard 10% that's required by the bylaw. There's nothing to say we couldn't have come back in the future to build that up. Obviously, we know we're in a different situation here. It's already been done, so we're trying to permit what's here. And it fits the letter of the law. So I don't see how...
I guess the way it was explained to me, my opinion, it does not, but...
I tend to agree with Bob on this one. I think it's the response to the DEP comments that you have is correct.
Mr. Chairman? I think you read it both ways. And I would like the opportunity to hear directly from DEP with regard to economic viability, if that's the question. And I think that if they had gone through the initial permitting process, they would have had to show us how they can't live without that extra piece of property. And this, they needed that in order to have a successful business. And by the way, Steve, I love your business, and I'm a deep fan of everything you've done for this town. No question, please.
I understand.
Yeah. And-
Local conservation, local company.
Yeah,
You should
and
do
you're
what
a good
you should do what you can to help local companies within the regulation of the law. I get it. I totally get it.
And so,
We have probably more land in town than anybody that's open space, fields, trees. There's probably 200 acres
And I said I admire
that we
that.
haven't touched.
I admire that.
People walk on it, hike on it,
Yeah.
all that.
I agree. But I would just like the opportunity to hear directly from the DEP with regard to the interpretation of that particular clause. And honestly, I always like horse trading a little bit to get that habitat back in some shape or form.
How about 2.5 acres of wetlands that are now on the property that weren't there?
Well, that's
In
Mother
2011.
Nature, and I understand that.
It's still 2.5 acres.
Would you, Steve, would you consider cut it in half, cut that little section out, and I'd support you. Give me back some of that piece.
I don't think we need to. Jack, look at the size of the property. Look at the use, what we're doing, okay? What we're doing there, we process material. The gentleman from Graves said it's one of the nicest operations he's been to. He said that at the planning board meeting, who, by the way, the planning board was unbelievable to work with and couldn't have been more cooperative trying to figure out how to get us through this process. Been in business, been in this town our whole lives. We've done a lot of good things. Yes, we did this without a permit. Wasn't intentional. It just happened. We were busy. We ended up with the other property. Brian's been through that, okay? So here's where we are today. If you look at the whole property, and you look at, I believe it's 60 acres, look at everything that is wetland, that is riverfront. It's your habitat. It's right there. We've given it to you. We don't want to give anymore. We want that. We want it. We need to use that area. We absolutely do.
Ken?
I have seen both sides of this. I hear you guys talking about it. The thing that I just keep coming back to is the last sentence in your response to DEP, to their comment. The proposed project proposes an impact of 41,826 square feet for the operation, 8.5% of total riverfront area. There's a 10% maximum allowable. You've already showed us that, that area could be exempted from that calculation anyway. So we're well under that 10%. So, I think that as proposed, I'm in favor of it. I'd be ready to vote on this tonight.
So would I.
Any other comments from the commission?
I guess my only reservation is that is more along the lines of what Richard was saying is, I have no way of evaluating the financial impact of that 1 acre on the business. So if I don't have that, I don't know if there is a substantially equivalent. If you lost that 1 acre, is it 5% impact to the business, or is it 15, 20, it's 1 acre out of 13 or 14, 15, I keep hearing the numbers bouncing around, I don't know what it is. Is it 15? 13. 13, thank you. It's 1 acre, or, 1 acre out of 13. That's, I'm hearing, is not going to be used for stockpiling or processing and for just transporting across. So I'm just struggling with that aspect of it, making it not financially viable to lose that area.
Here's another way of explaining it, perhaps, that may kind of help. Let's say, for instance, he was proposing a 13-lot subdivision, and you said, no, we want you to consider a 12-lot subdivision instead of 13. 12 12 is not substantially equivalent to 13 houses. So I'd say.
I don't know, I'd have to see the numbers, quite frankly. I mean, your example is so vague, I can't put my head around it, because it depends on what the numbers are. Could be 12 houses that sell for more, and it'd be financially more viable. So that doesn't get me anywhere. You know, I like numbers. I don't like, fuzzy things.
Any incremental.
But what's going to be there? But there's not going to be anything stored there. So what's going to happen there that's going to impact the profitability of this business?
They use stockpile areas, they
Yep.
drive through,
Right.
stockpile areas grow, they shrink.
Yep.
If we have to cut this back, our detention basin now, our flood storage goes back even further, and eats up more area of the site.
But it's all permeable.
It is, but
We already discussed that.
permeable, but it's unusable while the water's in the hole.
Yeah, it's in
You know,
the sink.
It's taking away usable area that they use for their operations, so frankly, I don't know if a number matters. Any incremental decrease is an incremental decrease, in operations and economics of it, and it's
Productivity.
It's a reduction. It's changing the current operation the way it runs today.
Yeah, I understand it's an impact. I just don't understand the magnitude of the impact. And to Richard's point, unfortunately, things need to be looked at more critically when they're done without the proper process. So coming after the fact is not helping this discussion.
It doesn't, but
Because it's sending a message, and this is it isn't just you, it's many sessions I've been in since I've been on this commission. We keep sending the message that you get more if you do it first and come back and get permission. And if we don't start drawing the line that, look, if you had come to us, maybe it would have worked, but you'd made a decision. Somebody made a decision to proceed. It's clear that you understand the rules, you've been around, you've been through this, and a decision was made to just go do it. And now come back and try to use, the letter of the law to try to, get a little bit more without what I'm seeing, without really firm justification of the financial situation for why that acre or even half an acre, throw us a bone,
Well, to your point, Carl, they can exclude half an acre based on their stormwater retention. So if they exclude that acre, they've essentially dropped that to 4%. So, of total riverfront area. So that's well under the threshold.
We would have approved it in the first place.
Plus, in addition to that, they've created a berm around the site, which is a belt and suspenders solution to make sure that no runoff is going to leave that site. And as this site's been developed, while it was unpermitted, they've increased the wetlands around the site by 2.5 acres.
These things are so complicated. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that's a sign of a good thing or a bad thing.
If the wetlands weren't increased, what would we ask? We'd say, hey, well, we might want you to remediate and restore some wetlands and replicate wetlands on site. And what we'd probably ask is to replicate in kind for the wetlands that were disturbed. So we'd only get an acre, we're getting 2.5.
Well, that's not exactly true, Todd. I mean, we've got an acre and a half of wetland, and we've lost an acre some odd of riverfront, and those are not...
We've gained 2.5 acres of wetlands on the site.
Exactly, but that doesn't mean that's not an equal swap for riverfront. Riverfront and wetlands are two different resource areas, two different resource types, two different wildlife types.
I agree, but they're well under the threshold for working within the riverfront area. They're about half of what they're allowed.
But again, assuming that the practicable and substantially equivalent standard has been met.
Which their expert says it has.
Carl said it eloquently.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Matt, have we received the report from Graves on the stormwater?
No, I haven't received anything yet.
Okay.
Basin's gonna sit right in here, this retention basin. It follows in the topography. So you're kind of sitting it right into the...
No, it's the whole site, Jack.
Basically, the 370 contour here, runs all the way across. So, as that 370 lies, as the more rain it gets, these back up and up and up. Oh, it's just vegetative area.
You wouldn't be able to go in and clean it out.
Jack, why don't you put trees in front of your house? No, more, so you block your view to the lake. I mean, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to vote on this
Any
issue.
other comments from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, because I heard earlier that we were going to indicate what was going to happen in that area, what wasn't going to happen in that area. So I'd like to see that. I suggest we see that before we vote.
What I would propose, and all I propose, is I'm not on board in supporting any type of, showing the area all the way up to here and restricting it from use.
Yeah.
All I'm showing is 20 feet here. This is the sedimentation area that's got to be maintained and constantly regulated in front of the berm. And really 20 feet, in front of this is what's flat and clear for maintenance. Beyond that, I agree with stockpile areas, keeping stockpile areas out of this, this area in front. But trucks and machines are going to be driving through it.
Right. I guess,
Yeah, so that's all,
I'd like to
that's all I'm
see
asking.
that
is-
on the plan is where
Right.
the stockpile area is, so we can go out there, on any given day and measure off that berm and say, well, you got a stockpile area that's, 100 by 100, that's right in the middle of where we said you can't have one, or you said you weren't going to have one. So I think we just want to see that on the
That's all.
plan.
Yeah, that's all. Just whatever you're thinking in your head to show
And I
no
didn't
stockpile and 20-foot whatever.
I didn't show proposed grades, I'm not with
Right.
existing grades, because, it's an active operation.
I just think, I think for me, you say things change, and I appreciate that, but if you have, stockpile that's 300 by 300 in that little corner, it's going to eat up a lot of the volume that you're talking about. So for me to approve it, I would want to see some limit of,
We'll deliver that on the plan when we sign it off, or it has to be before we.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, on the final plan, whatever, I mean, I think that we ought to be able to look at that, though, to me, that's my only hang-up right now.
So this plan set here is the set as revised for grades submitted.
Sure.
Before the meeting last week.
Sure.
So I didn't resubmit this to conservation yet. So
Okay.
I'm going to resubmit anyway, this
Okay,
final set.
so we'll have to sign off on that plan anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only thing that I would like to see on this current plan is, where you're proposing a limit of stockpiling.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have the opportunity to defer on having a meeting, having a vote on this tonight. I would like the opportunity to talk to Judy. You're talking to Judy Schmidt, is that how you're doing?
Megan
So Megan, I'd like to talk to her and hear her take on it and what her preferences were. And yeah, let's see the grades report. I'm just thinking that, okay, back to an earlier point, we're opening ourselves up to the old adage where, here we go again. It's either that.
So,
Mr. Chair, I have a concern about that.
Pardon?
I have a concern about that. Regardless of whatever you guys decide, this is an appealable ruling. If the commission starts reaching out to the agent, it could be viewed as intervening prior to a final decision. 'Cause talking to Judy is different. She's an outreach person. That's her designated job. Megan Selby is an analyst. She does not do outreach work. She is an enforcement agent.
okay.
I thought you were talking about Judy.
I have a problem with that.
He was talking about Judy, I think.
Well, he mentioned Megan specifically.
Oh, I didn't know who, I asked.
He just asked who.
Right.
So, good point. We wouldn't talk to Judy, to Megan.
I would love to hear feedback.
I'm ready to accept a motion. I don't think we should defer the vote, Jack. Personally,
But I don't want to vote against it until I have enough information. I don't want to vote for it until I have enough information. Right now, I don't.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I agree. And whoever makes a motion, but I don't want to vote against it either, but I do want to see the print. I do want to see the report, and I would like to see any discussion that the chair or the person would have with Judy at DEP before we vote. I haven't heard it's an issue that has to be voted tonight. I've heard that their plan is to go back to the planning board in February.
Planning board just didn't want to vote until they had a consensus.
Right, yeah, and so February, sounded like February was a reasonable timeframe. I want to vote for this, but I can't vote for it without seeing the actual print. And seeing the report and having input from
I could
DEP, I'd
just
have to
make-
vote against it.
If I could make a comment, you guys mentioned something about, doing this without permission and coming in after, and I totally understand that. But keep in mind, as soon as we found out, as soon as we were made aware, we acted. We called Brian, we got a wetland guy here. We did right away. We didn't delay it, we didn't avoid it, we didn't run from it. And I know people that do the same thing, and they throw them away, they throw them away, they throw them away, they make you work for it. We want to make this right. We went right to planning, we came right to conservation. I don't know how many sets of plans we're through, but we're getting through some trees, as far as paper. So, we're here in good faith. We're not hiding, we're not running, we're being upfront and honest, and all we ask from the beginning is, we're local, you're local conservation, local business, long history, just, I guess, keep that in mind.
I just want to make a comment, and I appreciate all that you've been cooperative, you've responded to everything, and, as soon as it was found out, you reacted, and in very positive sense. I have to just, from an ethical point of view, take some exception. Powell's does contribute to the community, but I think anyone on this board that takes that into consideration is not doing their job. Whether the person sitting in front of us has donated to the community or not should not be a factor in our rulings, is my strong opinion, as you can tell.
I said local company, employees, local company, local conservation. I didn't bring that up.
I agree with Carl that it shouldn't be a consideration. It's certainly not a consideration in my vote. I feel that the plan meets the criteria. I would note that we have a full board tonight. It's not very many meetings where we have a full board. And you could have a very different composition on a different night, maybe only 4 members, 5 members, and I think that's how I feel about it.
To Carl's point about consistency of the board and not wanting to reward bad behavior or unpermitted actions within the wetlands, I think what we'd expect in any case is that whatever violation did occur on any project, we'd want them to remediate it and to come up with a plan to address that. And I think as evidenced by what they presented here tonight, they've gone above and beyond what we'd expect from most other applicants with a violation. Personally, I support the plan. I would like to see the stockpile, the area that stockpiles are excluded from delineated on the plan, as well as the clearly delineating that 20-foot area that has to stay level as shown on the detail on the plan as well. But other than those two things, if we have those, I'm ready to vote tonight, and I'd accept the motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the plan as presented, with the caveat that before we sign off, the 20-foot strip in front of the berm be shown, and the no stockpile area be shown on the plan.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second.
Discussion?
Discussion.
Because I just some clarification. Because as I said before, and I have to stick to my word, although I would like to vote for this, and I'm sure what shows up on that print, I would accept and would vote for when I saw it, but I stand to the point that I can't vote for it until I see that, which means if you take the vote tonight, I'll have to vote no, not because I'm against it, because I'd just like to understand, if the vote is no, which I don't expect, if it is no, what's the process for coming back
We won't.
with the plan?
We won't sign off on the order of conditions until we receive a plan that.
No. Let's say it fails tonight.
Yeah.
Let's say it fails tonight. What does the
No,
applicant?
just the motion fails. The motion to approve fails. That doesn't mean it was a motion to deny, it just means the motion to approve has failed.
Okay, so could they come back with the plan all done like they're supposed to, and then, without any other applications or any of that stuff, can they come back and?
Yes.
And get, okay. I just want to
So
know
then
the
we
degree of
continue-
difficulty.
Then if
Should
we
it go that
had
way.
difficulties, then we continue the meeting and at the next meeting, they come back with,
Okay. Good, fair enough, thanks. I just want to
Discussion?
make sure.
go ahead,
If
Jerry.
the applicant were to decide that, give the other members a chance to see it and review all those improvements, he could ask for continuance to the next hearing, or she could bring some more stuff and give us time to go and talk to Judy, look at it a little more closely.
But like Bob just said, the composition of the members of the meeting could be totally different at the next meeting. You could have, 4 members that were a quorum. You could have a different composition of people here. So that's up to the applicant, I would say.
Well, we have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Let's have a roll call vote. Richard Birch,
No.
Bob Pease,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit,
No?
Ken Jones,
Aye.
Carl Luck,
No.
Katie Childs,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion passes.
Thank you
So-
very much.
We'll probably sign off on this at the January 2nd meeting. So do you think you can get the plan by that? Yes. Very good.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thanks very much.
Yep, thanks for your time.
So let's move on to current business. First up, let's address violations. Any updates on 101 Pleasant Street, Matt?
Yeah, I'm still sending tickets every day. Just sent one out this afternoon. Doing it every day that I'm in the office. My suggestion is at this point, because Adam Costa has poked him. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting with Adam on Monday, and from his computer, he sent an email out, and within seconds, we got a response back saying, yeah, I'm working on it, I'll have an answer for you tomorrow. Of course, that's like the 4th or 5th time in the last month that there's been a communication between the bond company, the new owner, saying, yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow, we're gonna get this settled, and I get nothing. The bond company was saying, oh, we're close to getting this done, and then after that, I get an email from the bond company that they copied me to the owner with a blank application saying you need to fill this out. And the response from the landowner was, I'm gonna call you on that. So my recommendation is to increase the fine now to $300 a day.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is second to increase the fines on 101 Pleasant Street to $300 per day. Discussion? No discussion, I'll accept a roll call vote. Richard Birch,
He's gonna mute.
Rich?
Rich,
Aye.
Bob Pease,
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Jack Rabbit,
Aye?
Ken Jones.
Aye.
I vote aye. Carl Luck,
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will increase the fining on 101 Pleasant Street to $300 per day. Powell Stone and Gravel, they still have a parcel that's under enforcement?
Actually, there's 2 of them, and I've got the 2 enforcement orders for you guys to sign off on. The purpose of the orders was to memorialize it, so I need you guys to ratify these with your signature so I can have the ratified ones.
Can you remind me, I'm so lost now.
To remind you,
What-
when we initially opened the hearing, there were 3 parcels that were in violation, not just this one.
That's right.
But it was just this file that was just approved that was under consideration. The applicant refused to bring the other 2 into the hearing. So it was decided that those would be done at a later date. Then I
Yes.
was instructed to write up the enforcement orders, which I did, to memorialize that these other two are in violation, that they're going to need an NOI in the future, which is what I've written on the enforcement.
Super, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to outline the enforcement orders?
All it really says is that you're going to file a notice of intent in the future. It's simply to memorialize the fact that there is a violation of property on the
Okay.
record. And I'd really like a motion and a vote to ratify those,
What are the addresses of the,
131 and 133.
all right,
And so where is 131 and 133 compared to where the, their store is?
133 is a store. 133 is the actual store building.
Yeah,
131 is the lot that, if you look to the left, it starts to the left. There is like storage of material right out in front, like product.
Yeah.
And it goes into the back where I believe an excavation company called Robel rents a space.
thank you for that clarification.
so they're both west and northwest of the parcels that were considered this evening?
Yes, I'm not as good as an orienteer as you are, but yes.
Yes.
And Matt,
Yes, sir.
if you could describe the extent of the violations?
Well, I can't quantify them for you, but what I can say is that it looks like it appears that there was work within the buffer zone and expansion of impervious surface without a valid order of conditions.
Okay.
I can't quantify it though.
Yeah.
I'll accept a motion to ratify the enforcement orders for 131 and 133
So moved.
Leominster Shirley Road.
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Bob Pease,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit, Ken Jones. Aye. Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Aye.
These are the signature pages for each order.
55 Spring Street, any updates on that, Matt?
I was under the impression Mr. Marsden was going to be here to talk about the plans that he was drawing up. If you guys recall, you instructed him to basically come in with plans to formulate filing an amendment to the, or at least filing a new order of conditions or retroactive one.
Yep.
But you wanted everything quantified on the plan because there was apparently more that wasn't on the plan that needed to be added. Drip curtains and stuff that actually was viewed as a positive but wasn't on the plan. We've already enforcement order issued, you can modify it and I can issue another one with a modification. It's up to you guys what you want me to do.
You feel he's going to come in with a plan, or with a NOI, or?
Yeah, I don't, Steve, I've been working with Mr. Marsden for about 20 years. He's not the type to sit there and stall on purpose. He doesn't do that.
Okay. Unless someone feels strongly, I think we just stick with the current order. Let's back up a little bit. We had one hearing that we continued, that we're going to hold open, possibly, for this evening. Which one was that? Was that,
13 East Street.
I'll accept a
Motion to continue to January 2nd.
motion to continue, was that 13?
East, yeah.
13 East Street until the January 2nd meeting.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, Richard Birch.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Ken Jones had to step out. All right. Moving on with back to violations. Butterfly Lane, any update on that, Matt?
Those are going to be in for the second meeting in January.
Okay, let's move on from there. 155 Reservoir Road, any updates on that?
They're also going to be in for the second meeting in January.
Great. Emerald Place Beach,
I issued an enforcement order. I got a bounce back, as I stated at the last meeting, because of the wrong address.
Yep.
I resent it to the correct address. Haven't heard anything back from anybody.
okay.
Don't know what you guys want me to do.
Chairman, I did have a chance to go down and visit the beach this weekend, and yeah, it's continuing to erode. And I've got pictures, and I'll send them
Yep.
to you, Matt. There's been no improvement, there's no activity there. That
Okay,
Well, there is,
go ahead.
the, I don't know what you call it, swale, the rock, There's a huge improvement there.
Oh, yeah.
They've changed that significantly, but the beach itself is still eroding.
Right.
I agree with you. It was there today. Let's give them some credit. They did some.
Personally, I feel that if we don't get any, hear from them or get any action by the January 2nd meeting, I think we consider fining. But I don't think, given the time of year that, as crazy as things get this time of year, that it makes sense to start fining now.
I would like to hold out for the second meeting in January, given the time of year. It's like, first meeting in January, it's gonna be here after we blink.
I agree with both of you, but I would like to make sure that we inform them that that is our plan, that if we don't have action by the second week, we will be voting on a fine.
Does the consensus seem to be the second meeting in January is
Sure.
kind of their deadline? If you can communicate that, Matt?
Yeah, that won't be a problem.
Thank you. New business, open space plan review and letter.
I hope you all had a chance to carefully review the open space plan. I'm asking that the commission compose a letter of endorsement for the open space plan. The open space committee is scheduled to have a meeting tomorrow night. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to talk about a parcel, which we may talk about tonight. I'm not sure if it's going to be on the agenda or not. I would say, if you go and you look at, I don't know if everyone's been out to that viewing platform that the snowmobilers built. I think they call it the Harley site. It's off of, it's on the Cowdrey lot. And right now you get to it by going down a dirt road, past a fence, over some land that is typically flooded by the Beaver Dam. So you can't get to it. It's a beautiful site, handicapped access platform. And if you look at the map of the land, of that land, and you look at Woodland Drive. Woodland Drive is a horseshoe. At the end of the right horseshoe, where it makes the turn, there's some very nice flat land there that's owned by the Conservation Commission, which is contiguous with that. And I'd like to take an amendment, recommend that the Conservation Commission amend the plan by saying, recommend the plan be amended to say that we consider the possibility of putting a parking lot there to act, in an access way over to the Harley observation site, so that, I don't know if it's feasible, but I'd like to at least put it in the plan to consider it, so that if it turns out, like 2 years, it's a 5-year plan, or I'm sorry, a 7-year plan. So if it turns out 4 years from now it's feasible, it's in the open space plan, we can pursue grants for it, and all that other stuff. And so,
I think there's a swamp in between.
Yeah.
Trail and there, isn't there? Just off the top of my head, I'm not.
and I don't know that.
Okay.
Like I said, it may not be feasible.
Yeah.
Bob, do we have any other specific parking or projects listed in the open space plan?
Not, for conservation land, we have the 3 handicapped access projects, that Matt's submitted, through Heather.
Yep, but I think that's under a different area, isn't it? Isn't that under ADA?
Well, but it appears twice in the plan. It appears in the ADA, and it also appears pretty much the verbiage in the ADA section, and then the verbiage in the inventory is pretty much the same. And it talks about, ADA, and I believe there's some places, other places where it talks about, if we acquired this piece of land, it would give us access. That piece up in the northwest corner of Lunenburg, where we don't have access to that back
I guess
parcel.
at this point, I would put it in as a recommendation or request it be added as directed, or, we request it, the open space should be the ones that are deciding whether to put it in and where to put it in.
Okay.
Where it's a specific project.
Yep.
That would, where we don't have any other specific type projects like that.
Okay.
That would be my only suggestion, is just request that we add it and see what the Open Space Committee says.
And I can do that when we meet. We have a meeting to discuss the open space plan in the first week of January, and I can do that at that meeting and transmit that recommendation.
Other than that, I have read it myself, cover to cover, and I think Brandon and the committee did a tremendous job putting this together.
Brandon.
They left no stone unturned, for sure, and I would certainly be in favor of a letter of recommendation from the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
With Bob's request.
I agree with all that, but just a procedural question, Bob. Are you saying, I know the open space plan is important to get grants. You can't get them without it. Are you saying that if the project isn't in the open space plan, you can't get a grant for it?
I didn't say that.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay.
I did not say that at all, but I think having it in the open space plan would be very helpful if you wanted to apply for a grant, and it was at least mentioned as a fee, as a possibility.
You say it can't hurt, but I just wanted to clarify, because that's so we could get a grant. I was like, ooh. Okay.
No, I did not say that.
Well, I mean, based on my experiences in dealing with grants and open space plans, because some of you may know, I've written about $2 million worth of open space grants.
Not feasible.
And there are two factors that they want in there. One, agreement with the landowners. They want enthusiastic landowners. Second, they go right for that open space plan. They want to see exactly how it relates. So there would be nothing better than actually having a written project. That hammers it right up, it racks up your points. So I can absolutely see where you're coming from on that, Bob, and I agree.
And it could be that it's not feasible, and I had hoped to get out there and look at it, but I think we should put it in there as something to study, so that if it turns out it is feasible, we could then apply for a grant for it.
I mean, even if you have a specific project, but you modify it and do something else, the fact that you've looked at it, or the fact that you're showing you're looking at projects, racks up your points on the open space part when they do evaluations of your grant applications.
Because there really is no feasible way to put parking along that little teeny road that goes down there right now. There's, and there's no real good parking space there now, so.
So I'll accept a motion to, in favor of having a letter drafted in support of the open space plan.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, roll call vote. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Do you need that done like tomorrow so it can get
No.
to the meeting tomorrow night or no?
No, it's for the January meeting.
Okay, all right.
Next item, changing wetland regulations to add a 5% fee for online files.
Okay, so as you guys know, we have started working on a template, myself, Rich, and Adam, on a template for the online permitting. Well, the other departments, like the building department, does a lot of online permitting, and they add a 5% surcharge to their permit fees to pay for the online service. So we would have to amend the fee section of our regulation. And actually, in meeting with Adam Costa about how to word it in the regulation, what he recommended was that there are three types of filings that we're putting online: a notice of intent, a request for determination, and a notice of resource area delineation, also known as an ANRAD. Okay, we would specify that anybody applying for those three in our regulations would be required to file the permits online. And then in your fees section, you would add a line in your fees section that there would be a 5% surcharge on any application done online. The reason why he recommended the two separate ones was if you have a general line that says there will be a 5% surcharge in fees for applications done online, if we add more requirements for permits to be applied, say we require extension permits to go online after a while, we wouldn't have to change that 5% line. We could simply go in and just change that, add it to that line in the regulation.
So for something that ideally is going to save the town money and labor, we're going to charge more?
All the departments are charging more. You got to find a way to pay
I
for
don't
the
understand how that
service.
works.
I have strong feelings about this. I don't think we're charging enough because it's costing the town, I believe it's like $36,000 for this software package a year. And we're only counting on passing half of that off to the people who are using it through the fees. All the taxpayers are absorbing the other half. So this 5%, I would argue should be 10, but the town, the selectmen already took a vote.
So
to make it
I guess
5.
where I'm confused is this process is supposed to streamline things and make it more efficient, yet we're charging more.
More efficient for the applicant primarily,
Okay.
because they can do it online. They don't have to go all these places, they don't have to go to all the different, so I'm sure it helps the town somewhat, but its primary focus is to be a friendlier community to applicants. So it mostly benefits the applicants. It adds to the cost of applications by $36,000. And this 5% represents, theoretically, based on history, half of that annual cost. And the rest of it's going to be in the budget that everybody pays for.
And to add to that, Carl, it doesn't necessarily lessen the workload of the town employees in the permitting process. It basically just has one repository for all town permits. So it will help open up the line of communication. So when an application comes into conservation, Matt goes and emails all the other departments. If they need to, they can come back and see the data or the application, or Matt has it electronically in his email.
So
now with this system, all of the information is in one location. All of the town departments are notified when a permit is applied for, and all have instant access to it. So I think it will help open the lines of communication where before maybe people were just taking their own local knowledge into consideration when they made their decisions on, does this need a building permit, or is this a zoning issue, or have the taxes been paid? If we don't notify the tax department, oops, then we could be issuing a permit to somebody that does owe taxes. So it really isn't necessarily that much of a savings in time, but it definitely helps open up the communication so that all of the town boards are aware of what's going on much more transparently.
Yeah, let me give you an example.
Hold on, Matt.
Go ahead.
Do you still have to, when we receive these electronic applications, then print off the application and maintain a hard copy file? Or can you keep everything electronic?
No, you have to do a hard copy file.
You have to do,
That's law.
so we're
It's like
incurring
the EDEP. You know the EDEP that you do online now for applying for orders of conditions through DEP? Their requirement is you can do the permitting, but you still have to keep hard copies.
So we're incurring the cost of now we get this application, it may be all electronic, but we still have to print the hard copy and maintain those.
Well, the applicant will have to print the hard copy and present them to us. However, see, this is the way, this is like, let me show you how the building permit process is working. The building permit is applied for online, okay? Lisa then processes the actual plans, because they still have to turn in plans, okay? So she processes the plans, puts them on the building permit file. All the departments instantly get a notification. Building permit number needs your input in your email. You click on the email, it takes you to your dashboard. Like I have a dashboard. I look at the building permit information that the applicant put in, and then there's a section for all the departments to have individual sections to comment. So I write a comment. It just so happened that one of our applicants that recently came in for an order of conditions for a garage, the reason why he came in was because when he applied online, I saw it, I looked it up on my maps and said, wait a minute, this is right next to the lake, this is going to need an order of conditions. So when I wrote a comment, I wrote, this application is going to need an order of conditions. The owner needs to file a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. It stopped the building permit application process cold because they knew they needed to come here, okay? That prompted an email response from the gentleman, because once I make a comment, it goes right to that applicant's email. Such and such department made a comment. When he clicks, he can go to the dashboard for his own file and look at the comments that were made. He then responded to me saying, I don't know what a notice of intent is, what do I do? So he made an appointment to come see me, I explained it to him. He hired the engineer, we gave him an order of conditions, all done. I go back in the building department's window and I can write in order of conditions approved on such and such a date.
So can I take that one step further?
Yep.
So he applies for a building permit. How does he pay the fee? He pays the fee to the building permit when he applies for the building permit online?
And you know what, I never explored that part of it. They could pay online through a credit card. Or
So then
they have-
he pays 5% more for the building permit, and then he's got to file a notice of intent with us, and he's filing electronically, so he's going to pay 5% more for us,
And then a convenience fee because he's paying electronically as well.
Right. So I guess how many times do they get hit with 5% if they're applying online? So say he's got to file a sewer fee, a sewer permit because he's filing online for the sewer. He's got to get a building permit. He's got to go to the conservation.
5% of all fees collected.
Not 5% on top of like every single fee? Or,
Well, they're gonna pay 5% for our fee, 5% for the building department. I don't know if the sewer department's on e-permitting or not, Carl, do you know?
No, we're not, no.
So-
We
so
are.
so even though it's the same system, they have to pay for it.
But the reason it works, Ken, is in the cost analysis, when the town looked
Yeah.
at this $36,000 bill, and they didn't want to put it all on the permittees, they looked at the total revenue from permits. And said, okay, in order to get $16,000, we need to increase fees by 5%. So if you don't have it on each one, you're not going to get to that level, and then whatever the shortfall is, comes out of the town, all of the taxpayers. So all the taxpayers
Yeah, our
are
pockets.
subsidizing permits.
Well, I mean, let's put this into perspective. The request for determination has a fee of $25, okay? 5% of $25 is $1.25. So they're gonna pay an extra $1.25, okay? A septic system or a garage addition is a $67.50 local fee. So that adds $3.35 onto the application. It's not like it's adding a heck of a lot of money. A developer who pays, developer who comes in, like the one we just had, his filing fee to us was like $2,400. So a surcharge of that would be an extra $120. And that's, the more expensive the project is, the more money it draws off us.
Right.
Our average project cost from the average resident is gonna be between $1 and $3.
And Matt, if I
Hey,
could
Matt.
also point out that
Yeah,
they don't
yes,
have to
yes,
use the electronic. Oh, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Richard?
Hey, I had asked you to see if you could compile the amount of filing fees we've collected to date. Were you able to do that?
Actually, I did. I sent you an email with the attachment this afternoon.
All right, how much have we collected in fees through conservation
in total
to
fee-
fund our
in-
operation?
In total fees, in just the strict sense of the word fees, we collected $7,500 this year total in fees.
And what is your, just
that'd
because
be-
it's public knowledge anyways, what is your salary in the office?
Too little. I'm
Well,
just kidding.
I mean, I would put forth that, especially for conservation, I mean, we certainly do not collect the fees to operate the office properly. Which means, to
Well, that-
Carl's point, the taxpayers are the ones funding the majority of that for people coming in or people building in town, which unfortunately myself, I don't think is right. I think the fees should be commensurate with the costs of the town to process and enforce the permits that are given out.
I don't necessarily have a problem with increasing fees, but this is going to be required for anyone, for notice of intent, for
An RDA
RDA
and an ANRAD.
and RAD.
Yep.
And they won't be able to file in person.
They can if they want. They still have the
I
option.
think you still can.
Filing online is not mandatory.
See,
Oh,
We can
isn't,
make it mandatory in our regulation.
wasn't that the proposal for the
That
recommendation?
was my proposal. But you don't have to make it that way.
personally, I think if we're going to spread it, I would support just raising the fees in general. across the board for each of these, rather than, someone who's doing something that,
Well, the problem is that the town does the 5%.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not our number.
But it does need to be on all permits, or else the calculation by the town doesn't work. If it's not on all permits, then we're not actually putting 5%, and that's not.
Well,
what the town
those
needs.
are the activities we permit. The RDAs,
Okay.
the NOIs, and the NRADs are permit applications. The
Okay.
NRAD
So
is a
what else
certification, so you
you
can
think
do
should be?
permit work. The RDA, we apply local standards to even when we give a negative,
Yeah.
so it's, in a sense, it's a local permit.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just trying to follow.
no, I
thinking.
guess what I'm saying is, I don't know why we have to declare that 5% for the online filings are for the section fee. Why can't we just say 5% of all filings are going towards the,
It's a good point, because again, the calculation only works because the 5% is based on the total fees collected by
Right.
the town. And if you just start segregating it to just these fees, the town's not going to get the 5% it thinks it is.
yeah, I'm just saying we should, if we're gonna do a 5% surcharge and it's for the town's benefit, we should do it on all
Should be fees,
applications.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's an excellent point.
So what application won't be covered?
Well, they still have the option to file in person, Richard, and they wouldn't incur that fee. So if they file in person, we'd lose that revenue.
Well, we can make our regulation, and what my proposal was to make it mandatory to have them file. You
Yeah,
asked me if
it's
it
a
could be
filing fee, so it's 5% of whatever your filing fee is, whether the applicant files electronically or in person, they are still entered into the e-permitting system, so they are default going to be using that system.
Okay, so.
Whether
that's
they
okay.
file
That's
in
where they get
person, paper, or they file online.
Okay.
Okay.
Still
So-
put into the system.
Well, if it goes for every application, then yeah, I don't have an issue.
Is that the way you,
That's the way we should
the
do
wording
it.
is?
Yeah, that's the way the
So
wording.
all of our fees are going up by 5%. For the things you said, we require the applicant to make it electronically.
The notice of intent, the request for determination, and the NRAD.
Yeah, so there's two issues. One, we want to tell them you have to file electronically for these things. The other separate issue is all our fees are going up by 5%, no matter how you file.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I gotta tell you, we-
Matt, do other boards require electronic filing only?
no, I think the planning board does do electronics, but it's not total yet. They're working on it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I would not be in favor of at this point, requiring all filings to be presented electronically. I mean, if you have somebody that's cutting down 2 trees, they just come in with a quick plan, paid the fees, you can load it up onto the e-permit system.
Well, how about, I got a suggestion. How about we continue this matter so I can talk to Adam Burney about the concerns you guys have raised?
Great. I think that's a good idea.
Adam's experienced in handling e-permitting, and he's very familiar with a lot of the navigating of these issues.
Good.
Yep.
Good plan.
And one more thing, it was just a joke when I said too little. So to the residents of Lunenburg watching this right now, who will watch it, I am very happy working in the town of Lunenburg, and I am very satisfied with my remuneration. It was a joke.
What was it?
There's already posts on discussing Lunenburg. Let me consult it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to consideration of Chapter 61 release request at 994 Northfield Road.
Actually, I have that form right here.
Did we make a motion to continue our discussion on the 5% technology fee before we move forward?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Katie Childs,
Aye.
Bob Pease,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit,
Aye.
Carl Luck,
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Aye.
Man, I'm looking at those minutes.
All right.
I listen to the recording and your motion, I'm like crazy. Keep it going. So anyway, 994, that's the solar field. And there is it's a change of use, 61A. So there was an email submitted by Brandon who took the time to evaluate this parcel under the open space criteria, whether it was a contiguous piece of land, wildlife habitat, protection value, was it 50 acres or more? And every answer he got was essentially no, because we're already, the order of conditions buffers Baker's Brook, it's under 50 acres. So he's kind of recommending against it, as far as going for it. It's totally up to you guys how you want to do this, of course. But I would point out that on this lot, and I did talk to Bill Gustus about this, and he is still pledging, as he's marked on this plan on his 61A, for that 39 plus acres of conservation restricted area.
Matt?
Yes.
So the portion they are taking out of 61A, if the town wanted to exercise its right, they would just be able to purchase that portion or the entire parcel? Where it's not being subdivided, that portion of land's just being leased.
Well, I can read the, as soon as I put my cheaters on here, I can...
Yeah, I just want to have a full idea of what we have the ability to do.
Right, in other words, he has two sites, proposed lease area A for solar and proposed solar lease area B. There is a third area within the commercial use that is labeled additional area to be removed from chapter 61B and is shown on exhibit A, which shows the location and acreage of the premises. So the solar lease area, 29.35 acres, the solar lease area B is 0.56 acres, and then there was 4.92 acres.
What's the 4.92?
It's this little area down here, Carl. I don't know what, I think that's for the roadway that
For the
comes in.
roadway going in.
Oh, okay. So that's A and B?
Yeah.
So the way this reads, he is just taking out the areas that he's leasing out of 61.
Except for the additional area to be removed.
Got 4.92 acres.
Right. The 4.92 acres. It looks like he's not proposing to take the 39.48 acres out. If
So
he separates
again,
that
back to my
lot-
question, does that allow us to just purchase lease area A?
Lease area
Or do we
A,
have to buy the entire parcel?
you wouldn't have to buy the entire parcel, just lease area A, lease area B, and the additional area, the 4 acres.
Okay, 4.9?
Yep.
So, just going down that path, though, something tells me that if the town bought the solar area, I can't imagine why he would put the other into conservation restriction.
No, but then if he wanted to do anything
So
with
we'd
it.
lose the 39.
Well, we wouldn't lose it, then he'd have to take it out of, if he wanted to do anything with it, he'd have to take it out of chapter land, we'd have first right of refusal on that, and then we'd be able to buy that.
Right.
But,
But if you left it in
Well,
chapter,
see, there's an interesting caveat with the change of use. The interesting caveat is that if the town wants to pursue its right of first refusal, it has to do 2 certified appraisals.
Right.
The same style appraisals we would do if we were pursuing an open space grant like we did with the Lane property.
Right.
Which is a pretty comprehensive and a very expensive proposition. $10,000 for 2 appraisals, done properly.
and we only have
You'd have to negotiate those appraisals with
90
the
days
landowner.
to do it.
you don't. Now, the fact of the matter is, and it's an interesting discussion, and I'd like to build on it a little more on a couple other issues, but we're out of town. The time, you only have 30 days. You only have till like the first week of January. And and the town has no money to do those appraisals.
Right.
So it's kind of a moot
And
issue.
Brandon evaluated it,
That it's not.
and
Right.
it didn't meet there was one yes, it was contiguous, and all the rest were no's. So I, for one, do not want to put any more time into this discussion.
All right, let me just read quick, just so everybody has, and this document is on the cloud. When the open space did their last plan, they came up with criteria for open space and criteria for conservation land valuation. And the 6 criteria they came up with for us to determine the value of a parcel was, first and foremost, wetlands present on the property or otherwise unprotected on a portion of the property. Number 2, there are no dwellings on the property. Number 3, is it contiguous or accessible to existing, planned, or potential open space or conservation parcels? 4, the acquisition will be gifted as a donation. 5, the parcel may be of any size, but larger parcels are more highly valued. And 6, prior use supports or do not preclude conservation goals. So those are the 6 set out criteria that the Conservation Commission has in the past used to evaluate Chapter 61 land. So just so we have an idea of why we're saying yes or no.
That's good.
To
Thank you.
question 1, wetlands present. Most all the wetlands on this parcel will be inside the conservation restriction. So the wetlands are protected. There are currently no dwellings on the property, so that would be a check yes. Contiguous or accessible to existing planned or potential open space or conservation parcels. It is kind of out in the open. There is recreation area around it, but no town-owned land or deeded open space. The acquisition will not be a gift. It is a fairly large parcel, and prior use does not preclude conservation goals. So it barely meets 3 of the goals in land that we would be looking to acquire. So, given that, I don't think it scores very high. Myself, I would not request that the town pursue it.
Are you going to make that a motion, Richard?
No, that was just in discussion. Where I'm not there, just to make sure everybody else has a chance if anybody else has something to say. Although I am a little confused and wish I had a little more time to figure out the 4.92 acres. Exactly what's going on with that. Because that is a substantial wetland in the front. And if they subdivide that out and make that a house, technically we have to allow them the crossing through there.
I think that's where the driveway, isn't that where the driveway's going for the solar field?
No, that was
No, the driveway's an easement off of the existing cleared property. They were originally going to put it across the wetland, and where the same owner owned both parcels, we made them put an easement in on the cleared land and left the wetland area undisturbed.
Actually, we wouldn't have to grant them a crossing. Under our bylaw, they're creating a hardship. In other words, they're segmenting that piece and isolating it so that you don't have to. You know, they could do a different configuration on the release.
I don't think that this piece is going to, I mean, if they just take that one piece out, that was the entire frontage to begin with for the whole parcel. So basically, if they sold that parcel off, they themselves have created the hardship to get out into the back. So they, through their actions, have landlocked the parcel. But if they just subdivide that piece off with the frontage, I believe we have to allow them access. Because it was still the deeded frontage for that property.
Access to what? If it's access to the backland, that's the 29 acres, yeah, you'd have a case, but they actually did originally propose an access to that backland, and we made them move it out. Now, if they turn around after we've made them move it out, and then deliberately isolate it to create a situation where they're gonna claim that we would require a crossing, our bylaw expressly forbids that.
Okay.
As was in the case of, I believe the name was Christie, 4 lots up on Lancaster Ave. The commission, this is back about 20 years ago, denied a lot on the same grounds because they were slicing it up to deliberately create a crossing and increase the amount of lots they were going to get. And the commission won that one.
Yeah, but that's not the case here. I mean, they're taking the entire frontage for the whole 80-acre parcel. So, I mean, this is the only access to begin with.
Actually, no, they've given themselves an easement coming off the golf course property going in. There's an established cart path, which is what they're using, which is what we based the approval on, because we wouldn't allow them to do a crossing. So there is an access. It's granted through an easement. So
Yeah, but they
that
can't
easement,
put a driveway in on, you can't have a driveway on an easement.
yeah, you can, actually.
Off of a street,
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can.
you can have a shared drive, but I
my
thought they
former-
had to be both on the lot line.
I mean, unless there's a local bylaw against it, my former mother-in-law had a situation like that. Her house came off a driveway, which was an easement.
I think we do have a local bylaw, the driveway bylaw takes that into account. I think you have to, if it's a shared driveway, it has to be along the property line, and you both
Right.
have to.
Which this isn't. Right.
Which it's not, so it had to go through an easement.
But, unfortunately, I think it's gonna be a moot point. At this point, I wouldn't recommend moving forward with the property.
I would make a motion that we not take our option to buy the land and let it be released.
So we'll make a motion that we send a letter to the Board of Selectmen that the Conservation Commission, after due consideration, does not recommend proceeding with its right of first refusal on 994 Northfield Road.
That's my motion.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Carl Luck,
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Throwing me all off with this voting thing.
Mr. Chairman, if it could, everything was just for 2 minutes, relevant on this subject. I think there are two things that we should take from this. One is the process issue that the whole town is, not just us, but the whole town is in, where this project has been in play for how long? A year? A very long time.
Yeah.
And we as a town didn't recognize that this was going to happen. And because we always knew that, the town knew this was in 61. We knew it was going to be a solar field. It was going to have to be taken out of 61. And yet we waited until we were out of time to even start this discussion of whether we wanted it, because maybe this it's a moot point here, because maybe this isn't interesting and would have been too expensive. But we've got ourselves in a position where we don't even really have an option. So I would suggest we think about some process where some flags go off when we're looking at projects that are going to be taken out of 61, and start looking at that and having this discussion early on as to whether it's interesting to us or not.
Speaking of flags, before we go on, I just remembered, this item appeared on the agenda basically 24 hours ago because of the timing. So it was under the emergency provisions that I added this. So if you could make the announcement that this is being taken up under the emergency provisions of the open meeting law, because it could not be reasonably anticipated in time to be put on the agenda, and there is a time constraint.
I'll make that an announcement, Matt. Thanks.
Okay.
Just to go back, to Carl, and then to go back even one step further to the whole e-permitting process, could that be a flag, and maybe Matt, through you to Adam Burney, could the 61, if it's in chapter land, can that be put as a flag in the e-permitting process?
That's a really good point.
And then, if it is, then, when it goes to planning board or building or to us, and if it's in 61, then that throws up another flag.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Like that would be one provision to help us with that.
Right. So the only other thing, that's great, Bill.
We can add that as a
if you can ask Adam.
question to the application. Is your land currently under chapter 61?
And just to add one quick caveat to that, this was actually brought up during the permitting process,
He's right, it was.
and that was why I proposed to the applicant that they put the remaining area under a conservation restriction.
He is correct, that was brought up.
Yeah, that's why I'd come up with that, because technically, I kind of knew at that point that the town was not going to be able to exercise their option, not because of time, but because of funding. And again, the piece just doesn't fall into the criteria for acquisition.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate that, Richard.
Yeah, so it was thought about. Unfortunately, I guess I just didn't vocalize it well enough or strong enough or enough time so that everybody remembered.
Well, but it's not just a conservation issue. It was a surprise to the selectmen. It was, who have to spend money to go get surveys and things. And so maybe we should have brought it up. That's why I said it's not really solely our responsibility to do that. It'd be good to have some process and trigger that the town gets made aware, that the Bureau of Selectmen get made aware. But in the other half of that, Richard, I'm sorry, go ahead.
As one of the 2 land conservation boards in town, I might ask Bob, when he meets with the open space, just to share our concerns with them, to perhaps come up with a little time or joint meeting we can sit to discuss this and come up with a criteria or some mechanism of alert so that we know this is coming up in the future.
Yep, another good idea.
And because I mean, that's a board that, has, I think, a little more time to perhaps brainstorm on some of these 61 parcels and map them out in town and kind of watch a little more closely on their level of development around them and possible development of them. So if you wouldn't mind, Bob.
I don't mind.
So my other point is, that works great with it, Richard, because maybe at that same meeting, because one of the other thing that came up at the selectmen meeting last night, my favorite selectman brought up, was this point that I mentioned about other towns targeting the rollback taxes to go into a special fund to buy these lands when they come up, or to fund the estimates or whatever. So I'd like to get that into that conversation with open space and among us. I have reason to believe the selectmen were interested when that was mentioned in it, and we're going to follow up on it. But they might need some encouragement. They may talk about putting a warrant on the town meeting articles for just this, to target rollback taxes on chapter land, to go to land purchase, or whatever costs are associated. It could be estimate, evaluations or whatever. And I think if we in open space, were actively supported that kind of a thing, if we wanted to, that could go a long way with the selectmen and getting something on the warrant.
Good idea.
All right. So let's move on to old business. Any updates on the Gilchrist Land Exchange?
No.
Done.
Done.
Can I take that off the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
It came back from probate? Oh, Gilchrist, I'm sorry.
All right, the small town forest, Jack gave us a nice update on what's gone on up there. Hollis Road Conservation Area, any updates on the Ford Stewardship Plan?
Nothing yet.
All right. Certificates of compliance for 554 Lancaster Ave, the Unitil site.
Oh, that's Unitil. Thank
You
you.
mean five
Oh, no,
550?
Lancaster.
There's 2
Oh, there's 2 separate ones to it.
separate ones.
554 Electric Ave is, 554.
Lancaster Ave.
554 Lancaster Ave is the one we approved for Steve Violet for the detention basin. I have the letter from both Tom Christopher and Alton Stone attesting to the efficacy of the basin itself, and they requested the certificate. I know I go by the basin, it's, stable, seems to be working very well.
Yep.
Haven't had any issues with it.
There hasn't been water running across the road there.
That's
Nope.
true.
Considering all the flooding rains we've had and how that road would easily flood on a year that wasn't like this,
Yeah.
yeah, it's obviously
Yep.
been working.
Yep.
And we do have a letter from the applicant's wetland specialist stating that the basin was done to design and is working properly,
Yes.
that I have read. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to read it, so.
No.
They have submitted an as-built description.
All right.
Good.
So if you guys wouldn't mind signing off.
Sign
on
it.
that,
Let's
yeah.
go. Pass it around.
And then what about Unitil?
Did we make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance?
Yeah, you gotta make a motion to approve that certificate.
I make a motion, we approve the certificate of compliance for 554 Lancaster Ave.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? No discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Richard Birch,
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Now, what's going on at Unitil?
Rich, did you want to go into
Matt,
that
you
one?
received Matt, you received the pictures that they put the hoods on?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Matt and I, and Jamie Rowe from Whitman and Bingham did the site walk. All of the stormwater structures are in place and operating properly. There is no siltation running into any of the detention basins or across any of the dissipating areas. I did notice looking into the culverts at the catch basins that there were no hoods on outflows. So Matt's in possession of the pictures showing that they put the hoods on the outflows, and it looked like it was working properly, so. And they did supply they're supposed to at the end of the year supply their maintenance schedule and plan and report, as they're supposed to do annually now.
They really did a beautiful job. They really did.
So, based on your site walk, would you support a motion to approve a certificate or issue the certificate of compliance to Unitil?
I certainly would, with the caveat that the condition of annual reporting of their O&M reports to the Conservation Office stay as a perpetual condition.
Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? There is none, I'll take a roll call vote. Richard Birch?
Aye.
Bob Pease?
Aye.
Jack Rabbit?
Aye.
Katie Childs?
Aye.
Carl Luck?
Aye.
Ken Jones?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Do we have any extension permits?
No, none.
How about approving some minutes?
You're up to date on minutes. You're up to date as of this afternoon.
Do we need votes on all 4 of these minutes?
We do. Has everybody had a
We need
chance to
4
review?
separate motions?
Just got them this afternoon. Did
hold on.
everybody really read them?
I read them today.
Has everyone had a chance to review the November 19th minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. All right, has everyone had a chance to review the November 27th minutes?
Yes.
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 November 28th
Yes.
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 and December 5th?
No.
Yes.
I haven't reviewed December 5th yet.
Can we vote on the first 3?
Yes, I'd accept motions on the first 3 dates listed, the November 19th, 27th, and 28th. We'll take those separately. Is anyone gonna make a motion to accept,
Approve those 3 dates.
approve those 3 dates?
Separately.
Yes. No,
Motion in a second?
yes.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Roll call vote, Richard Birch,
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck,
Abstain.
Bob Pease,
Aye.
Ken Jones,
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
I'll abstain because I haven't read all of them.
I vote aye as well. Minutes are approved. December 5th will be considered at the next meeting. Committee reports, any updates? No updates, let's move on. Agents report.
You want to read off the item because I don't have the agenda in front of me.
I can hand you an agenda.
Thank you, sir. I can see it's getting late. We're all getting giddy. 101 Pleasant Street, I think I already did the fine update on that one. Thank you very much. 842 Rear Chase Road, we're still waiting for the probate. We don't have any open space and land trail issues right at the moment. I've still not received anything from LSIC regarding, I guess you guys asked them, according to what I heard, for documentation on their upcoming management. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. It's not about the management plan, it's about the order of conditions. You know, we had a meeting where you guys discussed the order of conditions, and unfortunately I had to leave early. But I listened to the whole meeting, to the whole tape, you know, and followed along, you know, and marked up my copy, kind of thing. And I thought that I had heard that, at that meeting at the end, because there's no minutes at the end, because at the end it wasn't an official meeting anymore. But listening to the tape, it sounded like you said, oh, you know, we're gonna bring back the work product of tonight and review it with the entire commission, you know, and vote on it. And we've had 2 meetings since then, and that hasn't happened. And I'm wondering what's going on? When's that gonna happen? Is there a process? Is there a plan? Where are we on that?
I thought I remembered them trying to get them to come tonight to this meeting. Last meeting we were talking about that.
You know, I asked. but
Yeah, there's only so much you can do.
There's only so much I can do with them.
Matt, can we put it on the January 2nd agenda to review?
Yeah, with the commission, I'll ask them again for their attendance, but I wouldn't count on it because I did ask them to come to the January 2nd meeting, and, you know, I got some polite pushback on that. They couldn't make it then.
Yeah, I mean, we can, when it's in front of us, then we can decide if we're happy with the revisions and are ready to go, if we want to wait for their opinion moving forward. Unfortunately, it's not on the agenda. We really can't offer much for opinions tonight, other than get it posted for the 2nd.
And I don't want to offer any opinions, and I want to offer opinions or comments on the process. You know, typically, the applicant doesn't participate in the writing of the order of conditions. To me, we could take and say we're going to do it on the 2nd and do it on the 2nd.
I agree with Bob. I came prepared tonight because I did think we were going to have it tonight, but I wasn't clear on the agenda at all, so I'm not surprised. But there were a number of things, I think you heard, Bob, that still needed discussion among the whole group. And I would suggest we have it as soon as we can get it on the agenda, if the 2nd is it. And if they come, they come. If they don't come, they see the results. We can't just wait for them to show up to have an order of conditions.
I agree with Carl.
And if I could make a comment, respectfully, I disagree with that. We don't have others come in and write our orders of conditions, because every public hearing we have and every ruling we make, we get the applicants to agree to the special conditions on our order. So technically, what I'm writing up is the agreement that you guys have come to. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with LSIC. You're just you're going a little extra step and taking a template and marking it up. But with every hearing we have, it's an agreement. You're going belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball with every applicant, coming up with an agreement and writing that order of conditions to the letter of that agreement based on your motions that they've agreed to.
Matt, that's a good point, and I withdraw my previous comment.
Yeah, and I suggest we proceed with working on the order of conditions. I wasn't saying we should vote up or down on them, but I don't think, after this long discussion we had with them, I think we could have a working session on the order of conditions.
Based
come to
on
agreement.
Based on listening to the meeting, I agree. I think we have enough information at this point where we can draft an order of conditions.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have the right to do that, and you've given them plenty of invitation. I know I've given them plenty of invitation. If they choose not to accept it, then, I mean, that's their choice.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the other thing on that, though, is I hope they're aware that come January, we'll have 2 documents that are overdue. One is the update to the lake management plan, and the other is the annual report. That's, as of today, I think overdue. I think we gave them till the 15th of December for the annual report. So I think we need to remind them that they owe us those 2 documents as well.
Great.
Agreed.
Anything else?
Not on LSIC.
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that concludes the agent's report. Our next meeting will be...
What about the rest of the items?
The only other item I had was, 155 Reservoir Road, we've already addressed that. Shade Point, I mean, you know.
Well, no, I don't know. Here's my concern, unless something's happened, you could tell us. There's clearly an erosion problem that was identified on that beach that's dragging sand down into the lake. And I know you've been working with them, but I would have thought the immediate thing we would have required was that they put up erosion protection so that sand doesn't go in the lake. It may take a while to come up with a plan to solve the source of the problem, But all this time that we're kind of going around with them and they're supposed to be doing something, it's still eroding in the lake. So I don't understand why we're not issuing an order. I would think in any other condition where we see a problem affecting the wetland, that we would have an immediate action to stop it from getting in the lake, and then go through the process of how to solve the source of the problem. So I don't understand why we're allowing this runoff to keep dumping sand.
Talk about Emerald Place now?
No.
I'm talking about
No.
Shady Point.
No, we're talking
Shady Point, okay.
Shady Point. Because erosion was much worse than Emerald Place, to tell you the truth.
Actually, I disagree with that. Respectfully, I disagree with that. I think it's very minor compared to Emerald Place. And if you want me to write an enforcement order to do that, but I'm going to respectfully request that the enforcement order to Emerald Beach also be amended to do the same thing. Because if we're going to do this to Shady Point, we're going to do it to Emerald Place, and then I'm going to send one to Jack Roddickman's and do it. Either that, or it's a much smaller beach than Emerald Place. I don't see the impacts that are being represented here. I know there are impacts, working on it. I do put them on the back burner once in a while because I have bigger fish to fry. But if you want me to write that enforcement order, I'll be more than happy to do it.
I'm not,
because that's your wish.
I have a trouble with enforcement orders on sand beaches. It's like you got a sand beach, if I understand the situation correctly. The sand's on top of the beach, rain happens, it washes the sand into the water. We tell applicants, when they come in, we want you to take and drag the sand out of the water, they're washed down into the water, back up onto the beach. And to me, it's like sand is going to erode. There's no way around it.
There's nothing holding it back.
There's nothing holding it back. And to me, sand beaches are where they're existing, they're sand beaches. They're there for people to go swimming and for kids to play in the sand. And I have no trouble with sand beaches. And I'm distressed that we would issue an enforcement order because sand is getting moved, from on top of the beach into the water, and then in the springtime they move it from the water back onto the beach. I just think it's
Well, in this case, I don't know,
power.
Bob, if you've actually seen what's going on here.
I haven't seen what's going on.
You need to see what's going on before you make those comments. This beach is about a 45-degree angle. That's about, maybe 50 to 75 feet long. And the erosion isn't from rain falling on the beach. There's a parking lot on the top of this 45-degree angle, and that parking lot is running off down the beach. The erosion starts at the top of the beach, and it's a gully. It is a gully that is deep, and I have pictures that I could show you if I had the camera. So this is a situation that can be stopped. They need to do something to stop the parking lot runoff from running down the beach and dragging all that sand down into the beach. In the meantime, normally when we have construction people and we see that there's a potential for runoff into a wetland, we tell them during construction, you put up some barriers to stop it. So I don't understand why it's such a big deal to ask when we see things going into the...
So now it's a little different what you just said. Now you're saying you're trying to stop the parking lot erosion. So that's not the beach erosion, that's the parking lot erosion onto the beach.
Yeah, I'm saying we would normally require erosion protection, wattles, whatever the hell they are, to keep it from going in the wetland. Those could be put right along the beach, especially now. There's nobody at the beach. There would be no impact to anybody to put wattles along the edge of the wetland, or however close to the wetland you want, to the lake you want, to stop that sand from coming in. In the meantime, Matt's working with them to come up with a notice of intent to stop the water from, the excessive water from getting on the beach. What falls on the beach, falls on the beach. I understand that it's going to drag sand in. This is water that's coming off a parking lot, going onto this 45-degree slope.
The gravel parking lot.
The gravel parking lot at the top of that plane. Because the erosion starts at the top. I haven't seen the parking lot full of water, but I know the gully starts right at the top. We have a ton of pictures of it. So I don't understand why in some cases we're so concerned about things going into our wetlands that we make them put up lots of barriers. But when we see it happening and there's no notice of intent, we wait for months and months and months, and this is 6 months now. and nothing's happened, and there's no protection of the lake. And it's not...
I would make a motion that we send Shady Point an enforcement order
I would second
addressing our concerns about the erosion of the beach.
that. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Roll call vote. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
No?
Ken Jones.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
And I vote nay.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Anything else left on the agenda?
I did have a couple quick comments going back to the lake management. Matt had spoken directly with Judy Schmidt, who in turn spoke directly with Dr. Caleb Slater on the maintaining outflows for the drawdowns. And she did say to Matt that December 31st, they were going to extend it, but that was the drop dead date. Whatever level the lakes are at that point, that is the level they are to maintain throughout the winter until time is it's time to reflood the lakes. I know he has been trying to, excuse me, just get that in writing, just to memorialize it in case the people from the lakes do question it.
Yep.
But she was pretty specific with him. Were you able to get anything back from her yet, Matt?
No. Not yet.
Nope.
She was actually in the middle of catching up on all those file numbers, which is why I got a bunch of them just all of a sudden in the email at 5:30 this evening. She actually was nice enough to give me a call to give me a heads up that they were coming in.
I'm skeptical that Hickory Hills will make it down, to the full 3 feet.
Well, her concerns, and Matt can back me up on this, were, number one is safety. If the lakes freeze over, and I'm not there, but I would imagine with the temperatures I've been seeing that they're frozen over.
Yep.
And the water continues to go down, you're gonna get air pockets and safety issues on the ice itself.
And that's exactly
The
what Kelly
second
told me.
issue was as the water fluctuates and goes down, it's gonna drag the ice on the edge down, and it's gonna scarify and cause erosion and damage to the soils that are typically underwater.
We're also
To
going to
get
have,
to that point, the Lake Shirley is not frozen over. The most of the lake is not frozen at all. The cove I'm in, which is pretty protected and freezes quickly, is frozen except around the perimeter, which is interesting. The lake is dropping. It's probably down less than 2 feet. It's
I did notice
it's not good.
starting to drop.
And it's, and for some reason, and maybe it's because of the warmth or something, the edge is staying unfrozen. So it would sort of counteract that concern of ice freezing along the edge and then it being weak, because they're at least...
Again, those were her two concerns, but they did make a ruling that December 31st was the end of lowering the lake.
Now, Mr.
So
Chairman,
at that point, I think that if we get to that point, the applicant should probably contact DEP directly on guidance. I don't think that we should be going against the DEP's recommendation unless DEP contacts Matt about it.
Absolutely.
Rich, normally it's the 15th of December will be the turnoff date.
No, December 1st.
December
So
1st.
they just did
They
the,
extended it
but
to
that
the
doesn't make any
31st.
sense. They added a 2-week extension, and that takes you to the end of the month?
No, they added a
30-day extension.
30-day
He
extension.
added 30 days? I hadn't heard that one. I'd
That's
heard
30 days.
it is full
30
30
days.
days?
From December 1st to December 31st.
So they give
I
you
did
1
send
month
I
for
did send an
drawdown?
email to Joanna Bellata
additional
and to
month.
John Fortune, letting them know that everything had to be shut off, period, by the 31st.
Yep.
Regardless. And, that, about the ice and the air pockets and the safety issue, that's exactly what Judy Schmidt
They
told me.
don't really
That was one of her
Actually, we
items as to why they wanted it shut off on the
had 6
31st.
more pipes.
Anything else, Rich?
Not on the agenda. I did have a comment when we're done with the agenda.
Go ahead.
Personally, I'm a little disappointed with the commission's decision at 151, 181 Leominster Shirley Road. I think that was a very poor precedence to set It was by far one of the largest violations that I had seen on my time on the commission. So I do find that disturbing that we didn't take all available time and all available resources to review that. I'm probably even a little more concerned that 2 members voiced concern numerous times looking for additional information to make a decision. And there was absolutely no reason that we had to push forward with a vote tonight and allow those 2 members time to research so that they could make an informed decision. I can't remember us ever doing that before. I think everybody has been treated openly and fairly as far as being allowed to research any questions that they had using any means that the commission has at its disposal. And I think we should all just take a quick look at how this happened this evening, because I fear that we have opened the floodgates if there are other people watching, developers and residents, that we didn't do our due diligence on this application, whether it would have passed or not. Again, I am most concerned that the 2 members that asked for time and asked for information were not given that courtesy. And I think we should review that in our own way moving forward. Because I'm sure if it was somebody else that wanted extra time to make a proper decision that they felt comfortable with, that you may not get that opportunity moving forward. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments from the commission?
I would just like to share that I appreciate the chairman sharing my disappointment, and that I've never shut anybody down from asking for more time. And in my mind, this was a massive violation, and we just opened the doors, and I'm really interested to see what's going to happen when he walks in with the other 2 pieces of property. Are we going to ask him to tear apart a parking lot? Are we going to ask him to shut his business back a little bit? I mean, we opened the doors big time, and we were not given it. I don't understand what happened here tonight.
4 members decided they had enough information to make a decision, and the decision was made.
They hadn't presented all the material.
I felt I had enough.
We hadn't seen
enough material to make a decision, and that's the way I voted, and that's the way that Bob voted, and everybody else voted.
And I hadn't seen the Glant report. We hadn't had really a chance to have a conversation with regard to Judy. There was a question about the legality, and I understand that.
Let's not.
I'm not going to go there.
Let's not reopen the hearing. We
already
understand your dissatisfaction with the way the vote went.
Right.
And we appreciate that, and I think we should consider that in the future for the members who may feel that they weren't properly heard. And I think we can all take that to heart. I think Richard stated it pretty eloquently. Any other comments or discussion? No. Very good. I will accept a motion to adjourn until our next meeting on January 2nd at the Ritter Building.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call vote. Richard Birch.
Aye.
Bob Pease.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Ken Jones. Aye. I vote aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Shut her down.